Morning, colleagues. I see all of us are early today.
Morning, Dad Mlenzana.
Morning.
Morning, Honorable Mlenzana, and morning, colleagues.
Yes, good morning. How are you?
Morning, sir.
Yes.
I'm
Already
good.
there.
Good. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm
Good.
fine.
Good.
I'm fine.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Yeah, No, sharp, for sure.
It's been a marathon.
Yeah, but it's tiring now. Yeah. The body is telling.
Yes. Yeah, no, but
Yeah,
at least the year is coming to an end.
Yeah. Otherwise, yeah.
I know, sober right, but sober right.
I know. It's over right. Comrade Matthew.
Yes.
Hi, Chairperson. How's it? Good morning, members.
Hey, how are you, bro?
All right. I think Darren and I are looking forward to the Christmas holidays. I think it's been a long year.
Okay.
I'm speaking on behalf of Darren as Darren's shop steward.
Okay. No, sharp. No, let's get there. There's no other way.
So Darren is looking forward to the Christmas spending spree.
It's a critical part of the economy to stimulate the economy. That's when your industries make the money to pay for worker salaries. It's very strategic.
I got you, man.
Now here comes the chairperson. So you must put up your socks, Matthew. The principal is in the house now.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Dad.
Morning.
Morning, Shane. Good morning.
Okay, thank you.
Recording in progress.
Lubabalo, Darren.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, honorable members.
Thank you. Darren now in, Mashida in.
Yes, Chair, we are in. Darren is in church.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Lubabalo, can you start?
Chairperson, may I please request just for a minute? I want to check Honorable Moss. She has not joined yet, Chair.
That's
But
fine.
but other members are in the platform already, Chairperson. Just her alone.
Okay, let's take that minute.
Please,
starting.
Please joining, Chairperson. You may start, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Lubabalo, as I've said. Yeah, all welcome to this session. I'm co-chairing today's session with Honorable Linda Moss. Good morning, Honorable Moss. Right here, House standing and the committees, our support as members of the media and members of the public. As you know, honorable members, today we are meeting many organizations, members of the public, on the Adjustment Appropriation Bill. Just a brief background. Remember the Minister of Finance, when he presented midterm budget policy statement, one of the bills that was presented on that day was the Adjustment Appropriation Bill. So as the Constitution enjoins us to engage with the members of the public who will be affected by this bill, that's what we are doing today. And we are most welcome, honorable members. We are having a presentation by Budget Justice Coalition, from Equal Education, Ifada Bantwana, Property Point, and from COSATU. We appreciate you being here today. Let me check from the Babalo. Do we have any apologies?
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, Chair, co-chairpersons, and honorable members. Chairperson, from the Select Committee on Appropriations, we do have a few apologies. We have an apology for Honorable Mahlangu and Honorable Karim due to health-related reasons. We have an apology for Honorable Bibi. She's an alternate for Honorable Karim. Unfortunately, she has to attend another meeting. Honorable Mamarachane is going to be in and out of the meeting because she's traveling from Western Cape to Limpopo, Chairperson. Those are the few apologies, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Darren, anything from your side?
Good morning, Chairperson. We have the one apology from Mr. Sarupen. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me take this opportunity to wish Oromashang speedy recovery. I spoke to her yesterday. She may be joining, but as you know, she's not feeling well. She won't be participating except to listen. That's what she said to me. But and also wish Honorable Sarupen speedy recovery. He's also not feeling well, and we hope very soon they'll be back to Parliament. Thank you so much, honorable members. I think let's get straight to the work of the day. What's going to happen is that I'll be chairing this session, and then from the time when we start taking questions, Honorable Moss will come in. Thank you. 15 minutes per presentation. Members of the organizations who are meeting us today, we've got 15 minutes, and you know how we do it. You all make your presentations, and after that, we then allow the other members to interact with your presentations. Thank you so much. Let me start with Budget Justice Coalition. Introduce yourselves, and then I'm having my timer on my side. Thank you. Budget Justice Coalition.
Chairperson,
Yes.
I just received a message from Budget Justice Coalition. I think there are some challenges on that side. I've resent the link to them, so they will all be joining now. I don't know, Chair, whether we should carry on with whoever is already on the platform.
Okay, let's do that. Let me check whether equal education is on the platform.
Yes, good morning, honorable members. I am, except to say I'm also load shedded, so it might be touch and go, but I'm ready for you guys.
Yeah, we can hear very well. I think again to try and save you may switch off your video if you think that connectivity is challenging, but you are most welcome, Elise. Thank you.
If I could get an opportunity to share my presentation, unless you prefer to share it from that end.
I've made you a co-host, Eliza. I've made you a co-host, so you will be able to share from your side.
Okay. Thank you so much. Oops.
Take your time. Take your time.
Just checking if my presentation is
Nothing
visible
yet.
to everyone.
Nothing yet on our side.
Oh. Okay.
That again.
Sorry, just a second.
It's coming. Yeah, it's there now. You can see it.
All right. Oh, Jesus. Okay. Something is amiss. Let me just try a different approach here.
I am ready to assist Elise if she needs assistance.
Okay, Elise.
Perhaps it would be quicker and easier if you share it from your end.
Yeah, it's already there now. There you go.
Okay, thank you. So thank you very much, honorable members, for giving us this opportunity to speak to the adjusted appropriation bill and to bring our case to the committee. As you recall, I was here at the beginning of the year, about March thereof, or when the main budget was passed, and we had to obviously speak to the concerns of the appropriations there. And I came, and I am still here today representing as a group of people across the country who are young, still in school, and have voiced out various concerns about the conditions that they are facing and the threat to their education. And so I'm representing members of Equal Education and all learners across the country this morning. They've given me the mandate to say to you, honorable members, that they are facing a very critical crisis in their schooling experience, which they have aptly labeled education blackout. And so this morning, before I even go into the nuts and bolts of what I want to speak on, or what we are coming to highlight from the budget process, they want to express their deep dissatisfaction, their deep regret, and obviously concern about where the country is. 30 years into the democratic project, they feel that they are being left behind. The democratic promises that were negotiated is still yet to be felt by a majority of them. And so this morning, we want to highlight the social implications, specifically looking at the basic education sector and the schooling sector, and what these budget decisions, this fiscal policy and monetary policies mean for this majority of learners who still feel disenchanted and the democratic promises being elusive to them and their lived experiences. Next slide, please. I mean, we don't have to belabor the point. I'm sure everybody in this country, one way or another, is aware of this, the conditions or the crisis facing the schooling sector. We've got a huge group sector or proportion of learners who cannot read and write for meaning. Even those who can, the quality, there's a quality deficit in that. There's not enough learning and quality in that learning to translate to post-school education and even being absorbed into the labor market. We've got very huge infrastructure backlogs. We've got a spending and governance challenges from the very top to the very bottom, which is from the National Education Department to the very school level or micro level, that is the school communities. And so this education blackout is really helping or contributing to the inequalities between under-resourced and wealthy schools, between the privileged and the have-not. Our children are really contending with the most appalling conditions in schools to really make it or to get the basics or the bare experiences or enjoyment of this right to quality basic education. I need not to mention that service delivery to schools and learners is very poor and needs to be looked at critically. Next slide, please. And so while the conditions in our schools or the challenges in the schooling sector are many, today we want to highlight one, or we are choosing one specific condition or problem to make our case this morning. And that is the issue of the infrastructure crisis that is facing the country, the sector, and learners and school communities. Honorable members, as of today, we are 2 days after or into a 10-year anniversary of when the norms and standards for public school infrastructure was signed into law, containing very clear promises with deadlines of infrastructure provisions to learners and school communities. 10 years after that struggle to have that piece of law promulgated, we still have very dire and poor infrastructure conditions. Learners have raised their concerns and they keep raising their concerns of the broken promises that the government keeps obviously missing. They cannot for the life of them believe why we still have plain pitch toilets in 2023 when we should be talking about the fourth industrial revolution. So unsafe and inadequate sanitation, overcrowding, there's a host of other infrastructure crises that we could go on and on and on about. But for the sake of time, we want to highlight or give you an idea of what the National Department of Basic Education is saying to us. According to them, or from our interaction with them in August this year, they said to us that for them to be able to address some of the critical infrastructure backlogs in the country, they will need a substantial financial investment or money directed at the problem. And so they gave us an estimated breakdown of what these investment will look like. To get rid of all the mud schools, the zincs, your asbestos, all the inappropriate materials, they would need a whopping 4.5 billion rands to address the condition. When we are looking at sanitation backlogs, I mean, issues about appropriate sanitation in terms of decent and safe toilets, eradication of plain pit toilets, we are looking at some 17 odd billion rands. And the issue or the concerns go on and on and on. Next slide, please. So while the conditions that we have highlighted, next slide, please. While the conditions that we have highlighted really means that there's a real concern or there's a real need for financial investment into the department, so your national, your provincial, and even at the school level, for this education blackout to be arrested at, before it becomes another pandemic that we cannot really get our hands on. We need to invest in it. It needs adequate funding. Adequate funding, according to our understanding, means appropriations that grows in line with inflation, so the cost of goods and services, and increasing learner enrollment. We have a young population, a bulging youth population, and so we need to take this into consideration when we are thinking about investment in the sector. So for us, for having these dire conditions of crisis and the need for concerted and really targeted financial investment to address some of these issues, is very, clear to us. And what becomes very confusing and a little bit unsettling at the same time, or perhaps alarming, is austerity measures by Treasury or budget cuts, which essentially defeats the prioritization of what we are looking at, which is this immediately realizable constitutional human right, quality basic education. So we cannot in one breath say that we need money or the sector has challenges. We have 99 problems and money can solve 90% of it. And then we have, a government who is set on applying austerity measures and really defeating the ends of actively and progressively realizing this important human rights. Next slide, please. So when a very interesting statement from the medium-term budget policy statement was that it was a targeted spending revisions that contain overall expenditure while directing resources to core functions. So when we saw the word core functions, we automatically thought, oh, that is great, because basic education is a core function and it should remain a core function because it is the foundational sort of function that really adds or has snowballing effect in other sectors and other areas of the economy. And so when we saw this, we're like, okay, let's see what this has to offer. But when we looked and delved deeper, we got mixed messages. Honorable members, the small wins, and there are very few to celebrate in this adjustment period that we are looking at. We saw additional money that was added to, offset the wage bill and to pay salaries in the sector. And interestingly, there was projected annual nominal growth over the next 3 years, which was all good and well. We welcome the addition of money to pay salaries because we think this has been a huge issue in the sector, and at least something is being done to address one critical area, which is the human resources aspect of, the function, teachers and the people involved in providing the services. But, on the one other hand, and we already got the sense that this was going to happen because leading up to this adjustments and MTBPS, Treasury had already instigated and started an austerity agenda and issued advisory to that degree. And because of that, provincial education departments are constrained in hiring additional teachers. So while there's more money to pay salaries in the existing structure right now, we cannot get the needed or additional human resources we need to be able to provide quality services to learners. What this translates to is larger classroom size. So the overcrowding conditions that we've been highlighting over the years is likely to get worse. We are going to see higher learner-teacher ratios, and inevitably, all of this is going to translate to quality deficits in terms of learning outcomes. We're going to have learners struggle to, grasp the curriculum, to stay afloat, and potentially frustrated ones are going to exit the system without the necessary qualification or completion rate. Next slide, please. And so this was the story or the saga gets a little bit more confusing and alarming when we look specifically at the infrastructure fund. Honorable members, you realize that I am using the infrastructure crisis as a case study to make the point about why this adjusted appropriation bill is fundamentally and morally unacceptable for learners and school communities and should therefore be rejected on principle. So in February, when we were here, we noted and we applauded Treasury's efforts when they announced additional 1.5 billion to cover overcrowding over the next 3 years. We applauded the move to have additional money to repair flood damaged schools in your Eastern Cape and the KZN. And then we saw that actually because of that injection of extra funding, infrastructure funding, or the infrastructure budget grew in real terms. So when inflation was taken into account, it was a very great picture. Although the trend was volatile in the medium term, we saw that as a really positive sign of greater things to come. However, this adjustment to the education infrastructure grants from the adjusted appropriation. So when we are looking at the specific how the adjustments have affected your education infrastructure grant, which is the EIG, and your schools backlogs grant, your SIBG, the story is very alarming and very confusing because seemingly Treasury is giving with one hand and taking with the other. In February, we are seeing appropriations that seems to recognize the education blackout, especially the infrastructure crisis in the sector. And then come November, for some reason, the crisis no longer exists. I'm not sure if Treasury is under the impression that we have resolved the backlogs or it is no longer a priority to address the physical environment that learners and teachers are forced to contend with on a daily basis. Next slide, please. And so the budget cuts or austerity for this austerity agenda by Treasury is by no means acceptable, and we think it is a gross violation of learners' rights to safety, to dignity. Pick any one, which one really appeals to you and makes sense right now, really. Treasury is saying to us, or in a response to the question about cuts to the infrastructure budget, they said they try to protect critical services from budget cuts. We beg it differs because it does not make sense to us for us to be experiencing infrastructure. Pardon me, we have quite a noisy background. It doesn't make sense for us to be constantly laboring on lamenting about a situation that is constantly putting school communities' health and safety at risk, and then the money is removed or cut from it because of significant and unforeseeable economic and financial events. What Treasury is saying is that they are removing or they are cutting 1.7 billion rands out of that budget that is meant or targeted at addressing the infrastructure backlogs that is creating unconducive environment for learners, teachers, principals, or the school communities, because they suspect that education departments are not going to spend it anyway. And we find this highly problematic purely because Treasury's role in this whole saga is not simply to dish out money. They have the moral and constitutional mandate to also ensure that money that they dish out are spent appropriately and goes to the right target in terms of fulfilling or delivering the services that they are meant for. So for us, 1.7 billion.
Please. Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Please. Yes. Please go towards conclusion. You're already on injury time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. For us, 1.7 billion could have easily provided us with a lot of additional classrooms, many safe toilets, school libraries, and sustainable water sources. These are much needed infrastructure facilities that schools are lacking and would like, the relief from. And so it is very concerning. And while we are not in the ECD sector, the reduction of the maintenance portion of the ECD grant was also a really great concern, because already that grant is grossly insufficient to cater for the 4.7 billion eligible children. 17 rands per learner is not enough to be able to raise or to develop kids that can read for meaning by the time they turn 10 years old. Okay. Next slide, please. And so the implications are many. I have alluded to many of them. It is the most affected by these austerity measures and always punished by, fiscal consolidation agendas are learners. These learners that are trapped in this between a hard rock and a hard place and a rock. And so even if the entire education budget was spent with, without any irregular, wasteful, all those other messiness in the spending patterns, the money is still not sufficient, simply as that. Next slide, please. And so this morning, and in conclusion, our members have mandated us to ask you committee members to acknowledge the education blackout. We have asked of you in earlier on in the year when we came for the appropriation bill. We are reiterating and reinforcing our stance and request, and we are asking specifically this morning for you to reject this austerity budget disguised as fiscal prudence. It really isn't. It is not helping school communities or learners. And we need you, members, to compel Treasury to reverse the budget cuts, especially to the infrastructure grants, to ensure pro spending and to swift eradication of the infrastructure backlogs. Please ask Treasury to increase education allocations in real terms. We need allocations that grow in line with inflation and growing learner enrollment. And please, we understand that the responsibility of this committee is not just to rubber stamp the decision of Treasury, but we ask you and enjoin you to please provide better oversight over government departments, especially this our Department of Basic Education, to ensure efficiency and effectiveness in department use of available resources. Thank you. Next slide. So, honorable members, here ends my lamentations. I hope we can find a workable solution this morning.
Thank you, ma'am. That was equal education. Ilifa Labantwana, please come in. We have Ilifa Labantwana. Ilifa Labantwana, please come in. Okay, let's go to property point.
Good morning, honorable members. Am I audible? Am I visible?
Yes. Well, you are both.
Right.
You are from which one?
All right. Yes, I am from Property Point. I'll be representing Property Point today. My name is Unowanda Mutsitsi. May I kindly be given permission to just share my screen, and then I will also then just stop sharing my video to avoid any connectivity issues.
Ms. Mutsitsi, you've got 15 minutes. Now, please try to time yourself on your side.
Yes, I will do so. Is my screen visible on your end?
Very clear, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Good morning, honorable members of the Standing and Select Committees on Appropriations. As I have mentioned, my name is Noganda Mutsitsi, and I will be representing Property Point today. We really do welcome the opportunity to submit comments on the medium-term budget policy statements. And today, essentially, our inputs will just outline concern over government's really difficult task to balance both the imperative of fiscal responsibilities with the crucial goals of promoting socioeconomic development through empowering and also supporting small businesses and vulnerable groups. And so, let me just move on to the next slide. The agenda on my side from today is just to provide a contextual background of small businesses, give you a brief overview of who Property Point is, and then I'll then dive right into some of the inputs of the medium-term budget policy statement and the implications that this may have for small businesses. I'll then conclude with some general observations and open the floor then for any questions and answers, which I'm aware will happen towards the end.
Take a walk with us on a journey that started in 2008, where a program was born that sought to empower not only small businesses, but the entrepreneurs behind them.
Our key point was to say, how do we then look at developing entrepreneurs, link these entrepreneurs back into private sector supply chains where the marketplace is really at?
You know, we want you to succeed. We would like to see more small businesses come through on our procurement list. Each one of us has an interest in seeing your business successfully grow.
The goal was to create and foster sustainability for these businesses by reducing the risk perception of small businesses, helping them establish a rock-solid reputation, and building strong relationships. We are able to take a more holistic approach to growing businesses. We've cultivated a tribe of like-minded thinkers and designed world-class business development support interventions to help our entrepreneurs grow their expertise in running businesses, as well as cultivating personal growth that they then can pay forward to their employees and local communities. It's common knowledge that strong leadership must exist at every stage of a small business's journey with us. This is why we've carefully curated our team to ensure that entrepreneurs are able to gain true value from this experience. Transformation is more than words, and it's beyond compliance. It's beyond unfulfilled promises. It's beyond unachieved goals. Transformation is being brave enough to take the first step, and the next, and the next, because transformation is Property Point.
So yes, this is who we are in a nutshell. We advocate for small businesses, and we really put them at the forefront of economic growth. And so just to paint this landscape of small businesses really play a pivotal economic role by contributing to job creation, fostering economic growth, and driving community development. Their inherent agility and innovation also really enables them to adapt swiftly to changing market demands in the face of economic challenges. And so even though this may be the case, they also face various hurdles, including difficulties in accessing both financial and non-financial support, navigating complex regulatory environments, and also contending with really high competition within their respective industries. And so we really understand the vital role that small businesses play in shaping our economic fabric. And we also recognize that it's very crucial to acknowledge the importance of providing a robust support mechanism essential for their growth. And so in this presentation, we'll just highlight that the discussions that have been brought forward through this medium-term budget policy statement really have a direct impact on small businesses. Right, so again, our inputs will just outline concern over government's difficult task to balance fiscal responsibility as well as socio-economic responsibility. And so as we know that the minister really outlined quite a concerning global and domestic economic landscape, concerns over inflation, currency, depreciation. These really pose additional challenges to the economic landscape. And so because South Africa now remains on a low growth trajectory, it has several implications for small businesses and I guess socioeconomic development really as a whole. Firstly, reduced consumer spending. Low economic growth, this just means that people will have less disposable income to spare. And this has a direct impact on small businesses that really rely on customers for their revenue. Again, a sluggish economy, it just is harmful to most businesses since consumers are less likely to then purchase their goods and services. Secondly, higher competition. With reduced consumer spending, we then pose the risk of small businesses really having to compete with a smaller pool of customers. And this then leads to intensified competition and price wars and, essentially just driving small business competitors out of business. And then lastly, a continued rise in unemployment rates, sluggish growth, and this then hurts the labor market as businesses, entities, they become less willing to hire more staff in economically difficult times. The fiscal deficit and debt service costs, we note concern several aspects of South Africa's economic standing. The minister really acknowledged several points. Firstly, our substantial weakening of public finances, where he stated that the main budget deficit has increased by 54.7 billion. And then South Africa then is projected to borrow more money to cope with these financial challenges, which then will just result in an increase in gross debt and debt servicing costs. So ministry then says South Africa faces money challenges due to less company tax, high costs of repaying debts. And so the steps that they will take to cut spending is, I guess, quite alarming for us. They plan also to get more money from taxpayers, but the details, I guess, say that these will then just come at a later time in next year's budget announcement. So this has this is challenging for consumers, and small businesses will essentially bear a significant portion of the burden due to reduced consumer demand, limited resources, and financial flexibility. Also, South Africa's decision to increase their borrowing, even though we're not really in a good credit standing with rating agencies, it's not a really attractive option. And it will also have significantly negative implications for small businesses. For example, should South Africa be unable to service its debt, it can lead to a worsened credit rating, which then leads to higher interest rates, increased lack of investor confidence, and a really impossible environment for small businesses to thrive. Additionally, increased government borrowing can also increase interest rates, therefore making it more difficult again for small businesses to really access additional funding, additional support for their operations. Then we move on to announcements around the energy sector. We are very pleased at the positive steps to resolve South Africa's energy crisis that was outlined by Treasury. They really emphasized the implementation of additional generational capacity through renewable energy investments and improved operational efficiency, which holds significant implications for small businesses. And I guess this announcement also just aligns with the recent study that we conducted, where we highlighted the importance of generating markets and consumer interest in the energy sector by really promoting awareness in society and thus shaping consumer preferences geared really towards energy efficient products. So this will then just create opportunities for small businesses to meet the rising demands for these products and also provide really a pathway for market access. We do, though, note concerns with regards to the announcement made around additional energy vehicles. The government outlined plans to really implement tax and expenditure measures to support this growing new energy automotive sector. And, positively, they will provide opportunities, again, like I said, opportunities and access to markets for small businesses along the supply chains of new energy vehicles. But we do raise concern the negative implications that this transition to new energy vehicles may have on small businesses. Firstly, this transition would lead to shifts in market demand and challenges really for small businesses that rely on traditional automotive technologies and processes, and thus really just is affecting the competitiveness of small businesses that may be slower to adapt, we can say. Secondly, we note concern that government should really be careful in considering ways to mitigate job displacement and really to ensure inclusivity and accessibility for small businesses, and really just ensure that the transition really is just. We then move on to the logistics announcements. Again, we really note with concern that South Africa's logistics system is just riddled with significant challenges, particularly evident in the deteriorating performances of the rail services and inefficiency at ports. And as it was announced that ahead of the medium-term budget policy statement, Transnet sought a bailout of more than 100 billion rand, which was denied by Treasury for various reasons. And so this whole situation just underscores the urgency for reform and improvement within the logistics system just to mitigate economic losses and enhance operational efficiencies. As we know, again, small businesses really are heavily reliant on logistics systems to operate. And so with these disruptions, they may really struggle to maintain smooth operations, meet their customer demands, achieve profitability, and further delays really will just only further burden small businesses' and livelihoods. We move on to now infrastructure, where we are pleased to hear the steps that are taken towards ensuring a strong and conducive infrastructure ecosystem, even though it is plagued by many, many challenges. We note that investment into infrastructure has been highlighted as very crucial to unlocking growth. And some of these ways of unlocking this growth, as announced, is that government will widen the scope for concessional borrowing by creating new ways in which private sector investors and multilateral partner institutions will be able to co-invest with governments for selected infrastructure projects. And so, again, we're very pleased to hear of these steps. Infrastructure, as we know, is a catalyst for small businesses, and it will just allow them to thrive in an enabling environment filled with so many opportunities and growth and innovation and just access to the basic services that they need. What we would like to now highlight as our last input is the issue around socioeconomic development. We welcome the budget allocation of the 34 billion rand to extend the COVID-19 social relief of distress grant. This just essentially means that people who get the 350 monthly stipend will continue benefiting. And this is just a huge relief for the unemployed and those who are really in need. Again, for small businesses, this extra financial support can, will just really positively impact them by boosting consumer spending. We do note, though, that as in the 2022 medium-term budget policy statement, no specific mention was really made towards supporting the youth and women in South Africa. In his virtual address to mark National Women's Day, President Cyril Ramaphosa pronounced that the government had resolved to really just set aside 40% of public procurement to women-owned businesses in a way to achieve equality and establish an enabling environment for women in businesses. But to our dismay, no mention was really made of the progress made in this regard during the 2023 budget speech and the medium-term budget policy statement. Similarly, in the 2022 medium budget policy statement, it was mentioned that 500 million rand would be set aside to kick off the Home Affairs Digitization Project, which would employ about 10,000 young people over 3 years. And so we had really hoped that the finance minister would provide an update on progress made in this regard. And so just some of the implications that this would then have on small businesses should no attention be paid to these areas is that a lack of really targeted support may hinder the growth and development of small businesses.
Nogwanda, are you still there?
Yes, support.
Nogwanda, just repeat that point we lost for a second. Nogwanda.
Hello? Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, just repeat the last point we lost you.
Okay. I was just highlighting some of the implications of a lack of, targeted means towards women and youth would have on them, where I was just highlighting that lack of targeted support, it will hinder the growth and development of both small businesses that are owned by youth and also women, and that they also would face then challenges without really clear progress and support. And so to conclude, again, we really do welcome the opportunity to provide comments towards the medium-term budget policy statements. Empowering small businesses. The implications for small businesses are outlined in various sections that I've mentioned before. And this just essentially what we aim to do today is to emphasize the need for careful consideration and really tailored support to ensure that their resilience and contribution to South Africa's economy. And so we underscore really the critical role that small businesses play, and we advocate for inclusive policies that prioritize their growth and their sustainability. Thank you once again.
And thank you so much. And Nogwanda, can I just check, do you have Budget Justice Coalition on the platform? Babalu?
Yes, they have since joined.
Yeah, Darren, could you please make me a co-host so I can share my screen for Andile?
Okay, so we have arrived there because we are supposed to be the first presenters. Justice Coalition.
Yes, we're present, Chairperson. Thank you.
Okay. Continue.
Just waiting for the screen. But thank you. Good morning to the Chairperson and good morning, honorable members. And of course, a greeting to all the civil society members who are able to join us for this oral submission. My name is Andile Zulu, one of the members of the Budget Justice Coalition. And I think we can begin. So we can go on to the next slide, please. Yeah.
I thought you'd start with an apology because we're supposed to come in and we looked for you and you're nowhere to be found.
Oh, apologies, my apologies. We had some logistical hurdles initially.
Okay, that's fine. Then you can continue. I'm sure you heard that we have this.
Apologies, Chair. I think we lost your signal briefly.
I think it's pretty much, please continue.
Okay, thank you. So just to give clarification initially on the Budget Justice Coalition. So we are a coalition that consists of 22, yes?
Andile, sorry to interrupt you. I know you were talking, but we couldn't hear you. If you can just switch off your video, I'm sure you have connectivity challenges on your side. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, thanks. Thanks for that recommendation. I think that should make it better. Thanks, Chair.
Perfect.
So yes, the Budget Justice Coalition, we are a coalition that consists of 22 civic organizations. And what we aim to do is to build people's understanding and their participation in South Africa's planning and budgeting process. So essentially trying to deepen the democratization of budgeting by placing power in the hands of people to ensure that the state advances social and economic and, of course, environmental justice, specifically to meet people's needs and also ensure well-being in accordance with the values of our Constitution. The next slide, please. And so the BJC notes the tabling of the 2023 midterm budget policy speech. And we believe that budget policy is a powerful tool for socioeconomic advancements and, of course, lifting people out of poverty. However, unfortunately, our view is that the 2023-2024 adjustments appropriation and the MTBPS propose adjustments to social spending areas that need to redress our rising levels of inequality adequately. And so we call on Parliament to consider human rights implications that nominal budget cuts present and advance more equitable interventions to protect the right to basic education, access to healthcare, nutrition, and other constitutionally guaranteed rights for all of our country. Furthermore, we believe that human rights impact assessments, gender responsive budgeting, and alternative revenue-raising mechanisms alongside procurement reform will be impactful and actionable interventions to protect the most undeserved communities. And I think this all has to be considered in the context where we have over 18 million South Africans living in extreme poverty. So that's 18 million people living on 35 Rand a day. We have mass unemployment, and of course, we have record-breaking levels of inequality alongside a state that increasingly doesn't have the capacity to be able to properly deliver public services such as water, electricity, housing, and so on. The next slide, please. And so the 2023-24 Adjustments Appropriation Bill proposes large and significant reductions to planned expenditures in the current year's budget. This budget surprisingly did not make provision for an increase in wages, with the government expecting departments to absorb any wage increase from existing baseline budgets. And following the March 2023 wage agreement, our government reiterated the need for departments to absorb the outcome of the wage agreement from existing baselines. And so the 2023 MTBPS characterized the outcome of the March 2023 wage agreement as an unforeseeable economic and financial event. And so at the sub-program level, these adjustments amount to a significant number of 72 billion Rand, underscoring the extent of fiscal realignment. And so these modifications required to allow for the wage agreement go beyond the typical in-year adjustments. Next slide, please. And these proposed adjustments are quite substantial. They affect various programs within and across different departments. and they represent a material shift in the government's resource allocation strategy and indicate a reorientation of policy priorities overall. The modifications required to allow for the wage agreement go beyond the typical in-year adjustments. They necessitate what amounts to an entirely new budget in our perspective. And so to meet the spending targets set for 2023, the government will likely have to enforce an effective freeze on spending for the remainder of the fiscal year. And at the national level, these significant cuts have been made in various areas, including capital, goods and services, and transfers, all to accommodate the financial demands of the wage agreements. And these cuts have far-reaching implications, potentially affecting the delivery of public services and the government's capital investment projects. The next slide, please. At the provincial level, the impact is equally pronounced. Conditional grants that are typically allocated for capital spending are now facing substantial reductions. And these cuts are being made to redirect funds towards addressing wage pressures through the equitable share. This redistribution of resources has significant implications for provincial budgets and their ability to finance capital projects, which are essentially for long-term economic development and service delivery. The next slide. And so at the BJC, one thing that we significantly prioritize is gender-responsive budgeting. So we believe that bolstering our public system can be a powerful way to intervene towards the liberation of women who are compelled to stay in abusive relationships, generally out of financial insecurity. And the phenomenon of the feminization of poverty manifests itself by having women-led households being, for example, 40% poorer than those households led by men. And this is why we say that the proposed budget cuts in the MTBPS and the adjustments appropriations bills have gendered impacts. Next slide, please. So this means that 47% of South African women were recorded as economically inactive, compared with 35.6% of men. And of course, most of the precarious work in our economy that's available is also usually absorbed by women. An instance of the precarity that women face is the fact that the unemployment rate is at 35.7%, with Black women being the most vulnerable in our economy, with an unemployment rate of 39.8% in the second quarter of the year. And this is all worsened by our unequal gender norms that place the burden on unpaid care on women who take care of their households, who take care of women, of children, and of the elderly, of course, generally. As such, cuts to healthcare and education programs results in women filling in the gap through unpaid care work. Parliaments, in our perspective, must advance a gender-responsive budget. Such budgeting would reflect on the effects of fiscal policy interventions in entrenching gender and racial inequality in South Africa, and prioritize tackling underspending and corruption as a means to do so. We as the BJC call on Parliament to compel the National Treasury to provide updates regarding its commitment to leading an interdepartmental steering committee and working with stakeholders to develop a roadmap and tools to facilitate gender-responsive budgeting in the February 2023-2024 budget. And the quality of statistics and data available about gender-based violence also needs to be urgently improved, because funding decisions need to be made based on reliable official statistics. And then this moves us on towards the crisis in basic education. And so as the BJC, we're concerned about the nominal increase proposed of 10 billion Rand, which is 3.1% to basic education funding, which in fact actually amounts to a 1.4% reduction of the overall budgets in real terms. So even though education remains one of the government's most significant spending areas, the overall share of national spending that education takes up has been slowly and significantly dwindling since 2016, and it hasn't kept up with inflation. And more importantly, it hasn't kept up with growing learner enrollments. So what this basically means is that we have more children who need quality education, and we have a crisis of a cost of living and inflation, and yet, unfortunately, budgeting doesn't respond or rather reflect these realities. And the sector itself is plagued by low learning outcomes, overcrowding, insufficient teachers, and failing or absent infrastructure. And, you know, so in 2023, for example, we still have children who fall into pit latrines. We still have children who don't have textbooks. And we have many teachers who are overburdened and under-resourced and unable to provide children with the education they actually need. Next slide, please. And this also just reflects in terms of the school infrastructure as well. We can refer back to those statistics in the question and answer section. The next slide. Yeah, so this again, once again, reiterates the reality of basic education, the difficulties faced, and we believe that the government has a duty to provide proper oversight and ensure transparent, cost-effective, and accountable public procurement. The most vulnerable learners who rely mainly on government funding are currently, from our perspective, being punished by the government's failure to provide proper oversight and cost-effective procurement in regards to school infrastructure. And this then relates also to the crisis of malnutrition that our children in the country are facing. If you look at the most recent statistics, currently there are 6 million children who would, by the standards of the United Nations and by the standards of even international finance institutions such as the World Bank, would qualify as malnourished. So the number of children dependent on the NSNP has reportedly increased following the COVID pandemic and its weakening of the economy. And we believe that the National Schools Nutrition Program should be linked to inflation, as food inflation rates are historically higher. And the BJC supports the South African Human Rights Council's recommendations to extend the National Schools Nutrition Program to ECD centers and to provide meals over weekends and holidays, as these form the only source of nutritional meals for many learners in the country, which will require additional funding, coordination, and oversight. So again, in the context of widespread poverty, in the context of widespread unemployment, most children rely on the National Schools Nutrition Program to be able to survive in the context of their parents and their caretakers not being able to do so due to mass unemployment, economic stagnation, and the generalized cost of living crisis. Next slide, please.
Apologies, I'm just having some technical difficulties. I'm just going to reshare my screen now.
Thank you to my colleague. So the BJC is concerned about the downward adjustments proposed towards the education infrastructure grants, as it leaves many schools without the means to address the poor school sanitation and infrastructure. The Department of Basic Education reported that 728 schools across the country, predominantly in the Eastern Cape, still use only pit toilets, as I previously referred to. Already vulnerable and neglected schools in underserved communities are only more susceptible to further damage, making the infrastructure at these schools even more dangerous. And in September of 2023, the Western Cape Department of Basic Education reported that 249 schools had been affected by a severe storm which struck the province, and over 150 schools reported infrastructure damage caused by the storm, ranging from minor to severe. And so the per child per day subsidy meant to support access to early childhood development services for learners from low income families has not increased in nominal terms since 2019 at 17 Rand per child per day for early childhood development centers. And 6 Rand for non-center based programs. In real terms, this subsidy has fallen, and 50% of the subsidy can be allocated to food, which amounts to 8 Rand per 50 cents per day. Next slide, please. And of course, this also continues to concern early childhood development. The current budget has been reduced by 58.1 million, The basic Department of Education reports that 4.7 million of these children live in poverty and are eligible for a subsidy. Worryingly, though, even if government used the full early childhood development conditional grant to subsidize all 4.7 million eligible children, each would only receive 0.95 cents per day in 2023 and R1.52 in 2024. And then this brings us on to the crisis of healthcare. And we've seen decreasing capacity in most public healthcare. And so the BJC is concerned about the erosion of the value of investments in healthcare by inflation. The 2% nominal increase in healthcare from the 2023-2024 proposed 259.2 billion to the MTBPS 264.5 billion may indeed appear positive for resourcing healthcare access. But in the MTBPS, essential healthcare programs have received notable cuts, including HIV and AIDS funding, including healthcare in infrastructure as well. The BJC is concerned about the proposed cuts of 1 billion rand to the HIV AIDS funding, a 4% cut from the main budgets of 23.9 billion to 22.9 billion for the 2023-2024 financial year. A budget cut this pronounced may regress our progress to ensure that 6 million people are on ART by the end of this financial year. And I believe then we could just, for the sake of time, move on to social development and procurement reform.
Apologies, my slides keep on getting stuck, so I'm going to reshare again.
Okay, thank you.
And it has been eating all your time. That is it.
So I will just, sorry, Chair, my apologies. I will just conclude my section with social development and procurement reform, and then we can move into unemployment and round up with our recommendations. Thank you. So in terms of social development, we think that the extension of the COVID-19 social relief of distress grants, the SRD grants until March 2025 is a short-term solution. And the 2023 MTBS provides additional allocations to provinces to cover the cost of salary increases in terms of the public sector wage settlement. However, the allocations are only for some sectors, such as health and education, but there are no additional allocations for social development. And we think that the wage agreement taken at a national level must be implemented by the provinces, and provinces thus will be forced to meet the salary agreements made at a national level without sufficient funding. And we think that the current legislative amendments found in the public procurement bill must clearly outline adequate access to information and open data, along with active and timely responses to requests for information. The bill, however, worryingly centralizes power to the Public Procurement Office and the Minister of Finance, which we think poses significant risks as evidenced by state-owned enterprises. Furthermore, it raises concerns regarding the prospects of fostering an organizational culture that shifts away from this prevailing approach. Analysis challenges within the procurement system flagged by the AGSA and others should be learned from and implemented. I think then my two colleagues will then move on to youth employment briefly, and we will conclude with our recommendations.
Chair and honorable members, my name is Clotilde Angelucci, and I'm just going to add to the last input for today, which is youth unemployment. So we know from SATA that the last quarter, 8.7 million young South Africans were not in education, employment, or training. And then if we look at Q4 from 2008 to Q3 2023, the labor force increased by 7.8 million people, but the economy was only able to create 2 million jobs. So there's a big gap between the jobs that are available and the people that are ready for work. So we know that confronting the unemployment crisis, unemployment doesn't have a silver bullet. So we must look at GDP growth and employment growth rates. We must also look at industrial policies and a coordination of these policies. But for the focus of today, I'd like to mention that in general, young people have a much lower absorption rate into the market compared to other groups. And this means that young people usually bear the brunt of the lack of economic opportunities. We know that the first work experience is really important, and 8 in 10 unemployed young people have never really worked. And evidence shows that being able to demonstrate work experience is key, whether it's in the formal or informal economy, in finding a job, and that includes volunteering. So in this context, we believe that public employment programs can really create economic opportunities for young people to gain this important first work experience that can really that they can turn into a sustainable livelihood, especially in communities that are considered economic deserts where other economic opportunities are very limited. Oh no, my screen, apologies, my screen is really playing up today. But then moving forward for our current inputs, can you still hear me?
Yes, we can still hear you.
Yes, I really apologize about this. I'm just going to talk while sharing the screen. Oh, no, it's not happening. Sorry. We'll share. So with regards to our input, we really wanted to focus on the allocation to the public employment programs. So do you mind if I speak without my slides on? Do you mind? I know that I'm just aware of time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Continue, ma'am.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So very briefly, the 2023 and 2024 budget over the medium-term expenditure framework allocated 20.6 billion in 2023 and 24 towards job creation and enterprise development program, but that then there was a sharp decline for 2024, 2025, and then 2025, 2026. And the sharp decline resulted from the decision not to provide further funding to the presidential employment stimulus. So the presidential employment stimulus created over 1 million short-term opportunities in less than 3 years, and young people accounted for 83% of these beneficiaries. And when we talk about young people and youth unemployment, I think our previous presenters also made reference to it. We're talking about young consumers. We're talking about people that can really buy products in the economy, contribute to economic production and tax revenues. So when we look at these programs, we really need to focus on scaling the impact of these programs. So cutting spending on other PEPs, so that employment, EPWP and CWP is not really recommended. And the budget for the presidential employment stimulus must be long-term and ring-fenced for at least 3 years. And that will really give the program the ability to also look at some monitoring and evaluation indicators that can, so we can kind of, like all the other employment programs, can learn from the PES. So very briefly, closing on recommendations, the BJC reiterates its call for gender responsive budgeting to be implemented with inputs from stakeholders. We really look at we really recommend for the human rights impact assessments to be implemented more deliberately in the 2024 budget and medium term. And we're looking at basic education. Continuous budget cuts to education and ECD programs fail to protect and prioritize the development and well-being of children living in South Africa. So we really need to encourage the investment in the quality provision of basic education, and the transparent, cost-effective and accountable public procurement within the education sector. When my colleagues spoke about healthcare, and healthcare cuts to programs such as HIV, AIDS, TB, and healthcare infrastructure should be addressed urgently, and reducing the quantum of spend will really threaten the quality of health services provided. The social relief of the stress grant must be expanded to the food poverty and increase to the food poverty line of 760 Rand. And it must be considered in the MTEF while working with stakeholders for pathways towards a UBIG and pursuing additional sources of finance and tax revenue to fund it. And also we must look at the challenges that hinder access to the grant, so such as unlawful questions in the online application form, exclusionary online only application process, and so forth. And then lastly, procurement reform. current gaps identified in the bill relating to the centralization of powers and effective oversight mechanisms should be rectified before legislative amendments to our current procurement systems are enforced. And this wraps up our contribution. Just apologies for these ongoing technical difficulties. And thanks so much again for the opportunity to comment.
Okay, thank you. No problem, ma'am. Thank you for the presentation from you and Mr. Zulu. Let me check. Do we have Relief Alabantwana?
Chairperson, Elisa Labantwana gave a written submission.
Okay, no, thank you. That's fine. So we don't have them here. Let me not say we don't have them here. They made a written presentation. Thank you. Then we'll ask COSATU to come in. COSATU will be making presentation on MTBPS, adjustment appropriations, and the Eskom debt relief adjustment. So, Comrade Nate, please come in.
Sure.
Yes,
Good morning.
We have got more bills to reflect on. Within the constraint of time, obviously not going to be 30 minutes, you can have more because we are making presentation on the three bills.
Okay.
But we must still constrain you.
No, you must, Chairperson, you must constrain me.
We have got 10 minutes more.
I'm sure we can assist the time management, Chairperson. Good morning, members. I think if Darren or colleagues could just assist us to have co-hosting rights, so we can just share our presentation quickly. But yeah, no, thanks, Chairperson, thanks, members, just for giving us space as COSATU. Thanks, Darren. So yeah, we wanted just to comment on the MTBPS, and of course also we felt it critical also to comment on the Eskom debt relief amendment bill as well, albeit a very short, but we think it's still quite a critical bill. So just get into the MTBPS, Chair and members. Look, I think we, given our many challenges as a country, we had really looked forward to a very bold and decisive MTBPS in November. We feel the tragedy didn't rise to the occasion. We feel that instead of having a bold MTBPS, we should help stimulate the economy, provide relief to the poor and rebuild the state. That instead we tragedy chose to deliver what we felt is a very underwhelming accounting note with what we fear as reckless cuts to budget allocations and below inflation increases to key frontline services over the MTEF. Chair, we don't think we're going to emerge from any crisis as a country if we continue along a 0.9 or 1.4% GDP growth. That barely keeps pace with population growth. And we have many challenges, and all of them have to be addressed, not just simply one or two. From a very low economic growth rate, a very, very high unemployment and youth unemployment rate, endemic levels of crime and corruption, criminality, the challenges of load shedding, the real crisis facing transit and PRASA at our ports and our rail, the issue of collapsing municipalities, of course, of poverty and inequality, and just a general sense of despair amongst ordinary citizens. And Chair, we feel that Treasury at times just simply sticks to one set of interventions, and they don't seem to want to be a bit more creative or bold. And we're not sure, Chair, why we should be surprised when if we stick to the status quo, things are not going to change. In 2020, Chair members, previous Minister of Finance imposed a wage freeze on public servants and subsequently below inflation increases since then. Yet the fiscus and the economy remain in a crisis because we've not addressed the fundamental obstacles to growing the economy, from affordable electricity to reliable rail and efficient ports. We were quite worried, Chair, as COSATU, when we saw in the run-up to the MTBPS instructions written by Treasury to different departments to freeze vacancies, infrastructure investments. And we do appreciate, when you're facing pressures, then any other time, you would need to reprioritize. You would need to cut the fat. But we feel that a simple one-size-fits-all approach of a blunt expenditure cuts, when the economy is desperately needing stimulus, it needs well-oiled public services, is only going to choke the economy and weaken already embattled and struggling public and municipal services. For us, Chair, the only solution to our many challenges is to grow the economy. That's how you're going to place the fiscus on a sustainable path. And of course, that's how you're going to reduce the debt trajectory. Chair, we feel that at times there's a very narrow fixation on the wage bill. And we think this is simply a lazy option. It's not going to resolve our crisis. To be a little blunt, pickpocketing a nurse is not going to get the trains to run on time. What it does, and what we're seeing, is an increase in the brain drain from this public service of skilled public servants to better paying and less stressful jobs in the private sector overseas. So if you look at our doctors, our nurses, our paramedics, teachers, police officers, they're moving private sector and overseas rapidly. At times, some have said, well, the public service is bloated. Yet if you look at the facts, in 94, we're 34 million South Africans, we had 1 million public servants. Today, the public service has increased barely by 20% to 1.2 million, yet the population has increased by nearly 100% to 62 million. So that's having a huge impact upon the quality of public services. It means long queues at hospitals, at home affairs, declining teacher-learner ratios. The crisis we're facing is not an expenditure crisis, it's a revenue crisis. It is very interesting, Chair, if you look at the MTBPS, that Treasury actually admits that the wage bill as a portion of the budget has actually decreased in the last couple of years from 35 to 31% of the budget. So definitely there's no out of control wage bill. What has changed is the collapse in company tax. In the MTBPS, the 56 billion rand revenue shortfall literally is from Transnet. It's an issue of the collapse of Transnet's ability to transport mining and manufacturing agricultural products. And of course, mining industry in particular is a huge contributor to the state through company taxes. It's an earner of investment in foreign exchange for the economy. The Chair, just to get to the adjustment appropriation bill, just to some specific concerns. So look, we do appreciate you would need to adjust allocations at times, and that's fine. We do appreciate a significant part is about accommodating the wage agreement, and hopefully in future, instead of us blaming workers for asking for increases to protect the wages from inflation erosion and wanting to have a living wage, that in future collective agreements will be done before the budget cycle, and those can then be accommodated beforehand, just to avoid this kind of distraction which says, well, workers are wrong for wanting to have money to buy food for their children. But we do appreciate there is a bit of an effort now from government, from the Minister of Finance, to rebuild trust in the collective bargaining space, and we hope we can move back to multi-year agreements, which will benefit everybody, including the fiscus. We do want to welcome some of the additional allocations in the bill to Home Affairs for digitization and party funding, to the police, to SARS, correctional services, the Department of Defense, and some infrastructure investments as well. And of course, we do really hope that the 123 billion rand for Transnet over the MTEF will take place. And of course, we support the disaster management relief allocations. Chair, I think we are quite worried about some significant cuts, though, which we think is going to hurt service delivery, like for NSFAS, health, social security, human settlements, transport, water, sanitation. These are significant cuts, as well as to DTIC, to land reform, to home affairs. We feel these are really going to weaken the capacity of the state. So, for example, Chair, a 6.5% cut to home affairs, yet home affairs struggles to issue ID documents, birth certificates, passport. They're forever battling with long queues and are forever offline. We're worried about especially the cuts to frontline service or below CPI increases rather over MTEF to health and basic education, again, NSFAS, defense, trade industry, and SASA. And perhaps, Chair, quite alarming is that, and look, we do appreciate government is saying that further discussions are needed on what is their future SOD grant model. But we think that it's a bit of an accounting misnomer to have R0 allocated for it in 2025. The point is it must continue some form of shape because it basically is a foundation for basic income grant with all of its challenges. But we're quite alarmed in the adjustment appropriation bill that Treasury said that the salary increase for police officers who are not paid much by any stretch of imagination would be catered for by further decreasing the police officer headcount. And the police headcount has already decreased from 208,000 when they had the World Cup 13 years ago. And the population was about 40-something million to about 172,000 today when you have 62 million people and rising levels of crime. Chair, we're also quite worried about some additional cuts to what do you think are key departments and programs. So, for example, Parliament is now finally beginning to rebuild, which is very much welcomed. But we're cutting the allocation to them by 240 million rand. There's cuts in terms of local government for infrastructure at 1.1 billion, local government equity 1.3 billion. Amazingly, Chair, with our perennial challenges of the school infrastructure backlog, we're cutting investment there by 1.5 billion. We're cutting district health programs by just under R1 billion, which is the HIV/AIDS programs. And also, sadly, Chair, the health facility revitalization grant, we're cutting it by 446 million rand. Social grants, the SOD grant has been reduced by 1.7 billion rand because of administrative challenges. And yet, despite of the perennial challenges SASSA experiences, we're cutting the administration allocation to them by 400 million rand. We have long queues at courts. Workers struggle to access legal aid, but we're cutting it by over 200 million rand. We speak about supporting emerging farmers. We're cutting it by 400 million rand. We have spoken about boosting industrialization, manufacturing exports, etc. And we give very little to DTIC, yet we're cutting it by 200 million rand. Home Affairs, many other departments which depend upon CETA for the IT capacity, we're cutting that by 151 million rand. CCMA has been battling with long queues. We're cutting it. Universities are really struggling with the issues of NSFAS expenditure being cut, yet we're cutting it by 2.5 billion rand. A huge cut to human settlements for urban settlements development by 2 billion rand, informal settlements by nearly 1 billion rand. We've spoken about reducing unemployment and how effective the presidential employment program has been doing, yet we're cutting it by 186 million rand in the neighborhood development partnership. Our roads have real challenges, and again, we're cutting it by just over 1 billion rand there. There's real problems about access to the grid, around the transmission and distribution lines, yet we're cutting the infrastructure program for the electrification by 400 million rand. And of course, water is after electricity is our biggest crisis. And again, we're cutting it by about 900 million rand. Yet we know we've really neglected water infrastructure over the years. Chair, some of these things might make sense. Some of them might be because departments struggle to spend, and of course, Treasury can't then allow expenditure to remain unspent in a municipality or department, etc. But we don't get a sense in the bill or the MTBPS, what are the reasons, what's the impact? Is it simply about making sure money is spent, or what are mitigation measures being put in place? Or was it about more efficient expenditure? But we don't get that, so you don't really know. But the fear does become that this is going to have an impact upon service delivery. So we had really felt as COSATU that, look, what we're doing right now, we're simply tweaking on the sides, which governors treating this thing as an expenditure issue when it's really a revenue and a growth problem. And really, if we have to change things for the better, then we need to fix transit. We don't have 2 years, we have literally a few months. If we don't fix transit by February, we fear the budget in February will be a bloodbath compared to what we saw in October. And there's no amount of pickpocketing public service that's going to fix that. If we want to grow the economy, then we have to deal with the fundamental obstacles to growing businesses. We need to have a much more aggressive approach as opposed to simply delivering accounting notes in the budget speeches. So, Chair, I think our proposal number one is give more support to Eskom. Yes, we're having a bit of a bump right now with level 6, level 4, etc. But you can see progress over the past 6 months with Eskom. But let's give them more support, because as this week has shown that we're not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination. We really need to treat transit as our number one crisis. There's some additional announcement of, I think, 46 billion rand of relief by Treasury today to support transit. That's welcome. But we need to give more support in terms of transit appointing permanent management, measures to tackle corruption, wasteful expenditure, cable theft. Really try to unlock some of the blockages from purchasing new cranes, investing machinery, infrastructure, skills, etc. Similarly with PRASA as well, which is key to the urban economy. So we are quite worried about the deterioration of municipalities over the last decade. And again, we don't really see a coherent plan in place in the MTBPS, what is going to change things. We know that you can't print money, but we think the fastest, most effective way, besides growing the economy, is to invest in SARS. So the additional 1 billion rand is welcome, but we should be giving them more. In fact, we should give them a blank check to really say, what can we do to take us from a 64% tax compliance rate to 70% over the next 2 years? And that alone will give us an additional 120 billion rand revenue for the state. Really, SARS is our key to changing things, just like it was key in the Madiba and Mbeki administrations. So we do think we need to fill critical frontline vacancies in the public service, especially law enforcement. We should be placing the RAF, Road Accident Fund, under administration. and really overhaul them, including tabling the RAF and the RAP scores of Parliament, so we can begin to lower the 28% of fuel price regime that goes towards taxes. And we're quite amazed, Chair, that the presidential program has done so well. Why are we not expanding it? Why are we constantly cutting it back when we should actually be saying, let's increase it to 2 million active participants, because that's going to help break the back of youth unemployment. Again, Chair, with the SOD grant has been a huge poverty alleviation tool by the ANC administration. With all of its issues, it's been a wonderful intervention. We should really be saying, let's adjust it for inflation, let's link its participants to skills and employment opportunities. And similarly, we should be expediting infrastructure investments, not cutting them. And we also do need, Chair, hopefully we can see next week the National Assembly passing the two-part pension relief bills, and that they would come into effect in the course of next year, and that is going to give relief to highly indebted workers. But I think our point, Chair, on MTBPS and the adjustment appropriation bill is that we need to take these common sense interventions on board. This is what's going to get us to a 4% GDP growth rate, but to continue as is not going to change things. In fact, it's going to allow things to get worse. Chair, just quickly on the Eskom debt relief bill, I'll be very quick. We had supported the Eskom Debt Relief Act. We had long championed a package to assist Eskom, including reducing its debt burden, which will enable it to focus on maintenance, on new generation capacity, etc. But we are concerned about some provisions. I think we all agree that Eskom is too big to fail. It's a lifeline for the economy, and it has driven South Africa's industrialization. I think we all know the causes of its malaise, etc. Chair, we had long raised this just COSATU. We were pleased that government did move with speed to say, let's give Eskom that kind of support and so forth. But I think we were concerned about two conditions. One in the Act. In the Act itself, it says that Eskom has restrictions upon investing in new generation capacity. For us, it doesn't make sense because Eskom is constantly battling to keep the lights on because half of its fleet is just simply too old. This is why there's constant tripping. This is why out of our 47 megawatts of capacity, we struggle to get 30 megawatts working. We should be allowing Eskom, yes, invest in maintenance as a short-term relief, but we also need to allow Eskom to invest in new generation capacity to make sure we avoid becoming a society of permanent load shedding. So we think that clause, which limits the restriction from investing in new generation, should simply be removed from the Act. But then, Chair, just quickly to skim to the end, the bill introduced a new clause requiring Eskom to pay Treasury interest for the debt provided under the Act. So this is a new clause. It's a wording shift because the Act provides for Eskom's debt to be paid to the state, repaid to the state via shares issued by Eskom to the state. If we're now going to say to the Eskom that you need to pay the state interest, that's quite worrying because I think the whole purpose of relieving Eskom of 250 billion rand was to enable it to shift its resources to maintenance, to new generation investments, not simply to ensure debts are paid timelessly. We want to end the debt burden in Eskom, not to simply shift it to a future date. So I propose in that regard, Chair, simply for clause 1A, bracket, and then double A again, be deleted and the existing Eskom debt repayment modality to the state be retained, which is paying via shares to the state. There are provisions, Chair, for Eskom if it doesn't comply with the turnaround plan, that the state can, reduce payments, further relief given to Eskom. We think these are fine because this is going to help ensure Eskom does engage in a turnaround plan because we can't afford a bailout every year. We agree this is the once-off intervention and we do need to see Eskom sticking with efficiency to its turnaround plan. So I think in conclusion, Chair, we do welcome the amendment bill in terms of holding Eskom accountable, but remain very concerned about the limits on new investments in generation capacity and about the new clauses requiring Eskom to pay interest on its debt relief to the state. And we think that needs to be deleted, given Eskom is still extremely financially very fragile. And of course, we need to see additional measures being given to Eskom, Chair, from wasteful expenditure, corruption, criminality, etc. Let me stop there, Chair, and apologize I went slightly longer than I'd hoped, but thank you for indulging COSATU as always, Chair. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Comrade Matthew COSATU. Thank all the presenters who have made very good cases for their points of view, and the committees have been listening. We may agree or not agree with certain things that you have raised, but we really appreciate you are taking time in preparing for this meeting, and it's very clear from your presentations that the positions that you are coming up with are positions that have been well thought and well researched. Obviously, as you know, there are always different views on one matter. Having said that, honorable members, let me call my co-chair, Honorable Linda Moss, who's an acting chair of the Select Committee on Appropriations, to continue with the meeting. She'll be taking questions and dealing with the responses and so on until the end of the meeting. Honorable Moss, please come in.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. And thank you very much for those organizations who have presented their case.
Honorable Moss, if it's possible, can you show your face so that they can see who they are taking to, and then you can switch it off after that, if that's possible. Okay.
Good morning, Chairperson, and good morning all the representatives from different organizations. I will allow you to give your questions, honorable members, and then I will switch off my video. So members, there is the presentation. So I would like that you people of your members to elaborate or to asking your questions or raise your concerns. Over to you guys.
Honorable Amos, I see the hands. I see Honorable Dennis Ryder and Honorable Oscar Matafa. The hands, I hear Honorable, it's saying that can then Honorable Dennis followed by Honorable Matafa come in? Honorable, thank you. I think that's what the chair is saying.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Come in, Dennis.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Buthelezi, for rescuing us. We've had this the whole week. Yeah, appreciation for the various presentations. I think I'd like to start with equal education, but I think that my inputs for equal education are just as valid for the BJC. Equal education spoke about there's a small win that there's additional funding going towards paying salaries. And then a little bit later, they spoke about the alarming grant reductions when it came to discussions about the infrastructure backlog grant and the infrastructure grants that have been reduced. Now, I think I share your concerns most wholeheartedly about those reductions. I'm not as excited about the salary increases. And before Mr. Parks jumps up and down, I think that our teachers are, in many cases, our good teachers, our qualified teachers, and our committed teachers are hopelessly underpaid. So, and I think this is a theme that runs throughout the public service, is that the committed public servants are certainly not as well remunerated as they could be. But unfortunately, the fact is that the public service is overstuffed with people who are not productive. And while I think looking at the raw numbers, Mr. Parks, is not entirely helpful. One should rather look at the employees that actually contribute something and add value. I think at this stage we have too many public servants, and this goes certainly for teachers as well, who are professional union members rather than giving teaching time and face time in the classrooms. So for that reason, I think it's incredibly important for me to point out on page 34 of the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill is a little statement that one can easily overlook on page 34, but the ANC chose to trumpet it out in their declaration, sorry, in their response in the declaration in the NCOP this week when the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill was discussed. And while we're not discussing that today, I think it points exactly to the fact that we're dealing with here. And I'm going to read the clause on page 34. It says an amount of 57 million is reprioritized from the school infrastructure backlog grants to the vote of the National Department of Basic Education. Of this, 32 million will fund compensation of employees. And 25 million will fund information and community technology upgrades. So what that essentially means is that we are taking money away from fixing pit latrines, which is raised in several of the presentations today, the fact that pit latrines continue. And that's the money that we're using to pay salaries. Now, whilst, as I said, some salary increases may well be celebrated or needed even, certainly I don't think that taking money away from fixing pit latrines sends the right message. And again, President Joe Biden said something once, and I'm going to roughly quote him. He said, "Don't tell me what your priorities are. Show me your budget, and I'll tell you what your priorities are." And I think that certainly is the case here. So taking money and giving tablets to principals, laptops to principals, and paying teachers' salaries instead of fixing pit latrines is exactly what the ANC celebrated in their declaration on the Division of Revenue, and it just highlights, I think, Equal Education and the Budget Justice Coalition's concerns as to what's going on. Chair, I thought it was most interesting that the cost of living crisis was mentioned by all of the presenters today. It's something that exact phrase came from each one of the presenters. And yet it wasn't commented on by the minister in his budget speech, in his budget adjustment speech, and we've seen very little from Treasury dealing with the cost of living crisis. Moving perhaps to the specific presentation from Budget Justice Coalition, I just want to perhaps make a point that I think that the tone of your presentation today was constructive and far less combative than we've seen in the past, and I actually appreciate that, because you've given us some good content, and in the past some good content has been ignored because of the fact that the tone that it was presented in was a little bit it overshadowed the content, let's put it that way. So I want to
Mr. Ryder, you break up. We can't hear you. Honorable Ryder. Yeah.
It's not something that we work with closely. If you could perhaps just expound on that, because that triggered an alarm for me. And then Mr. Parks's presentation, I think you're the only one that spoke about Eskom, and I appreciate your comments on that. You did, however, mention that there's been great progress in the last 6 months. Unfortunately, sir, that progress has come at the cost of a huge amount of diesel, and we've blown the budget on diesel, trying to keep the lights on and trying to build a case against the outgoing CEO and demonstrate how wonderful the new Minister of Undetermined Portfolio is. Yeah, I think that progress might be a bit of smoke and mirrors hidden behind the massive amounts of diesel that have had to be burnt up in the past 6 months. There are articles in the news about it this morning, but I think if you have a look at the reports that have come through in the last couple of weeks, you will see that. And then the next question I have is for Treasury, and it relates to the Eskom debt relief bill and its adjustment. And I just want to get an understanding of, the debt relief that's happening for users, because there was a comment made by the Premier of Gauteng during a rally recently, where he said that we've written off all of the backlog debt for users, and I don't see that content in the bill. I haven't picked it up. Perhaps it's a poor reading from my side. And if we can just get some clarity, perhaps from Treasury, what consumer debt is being written off, and what the trade-offs are there. I'm very aware of the fact that there is relief for municipalities and bulk users. But some of those conditions, it looks like those are being taken to court now. I have seen that Salga is taking the matter on review, where Eskom is trying to collect money directly from certain bulk users. The obvious Mfuleni case is one, but there are other issues as well. So, yeah, perhaps some comments from Treasury as they respond to the questions and the issues raised by Mr. Parks on Eskom. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ryder. And getting the Honorable Polisile. Over to you, sir.
Comrade Chair, it was Comrade Matafa that was noted after Honorable Ryder. I beg your indulgence, Chair.
Honorable Matafa.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good day, chairpersons, members, and guests. Chair, let me start first by welcoming the presentations and thanking the participation by civil society. This is how we shape our policies and how we learn from the experiences by civil society, and we'll definitely take those issues that we believe can enhance the work that we do as a legislature. Chair, let me start first by making a remark from the input that was made, and I think it was by Equal Education, and they use a phrase called education blackout. I just want to respectfully differ that we are experiencing education blackout just for two reasons. I just want to underscore my point. The first one, Chair, in their own admission, they do state that the Treasury indicates that certain critical frontline services will be protected. I want to assure you, Chair, that basic education, health, and police services are those frontline services. And if you look at the budget adjustment, in terms of learning and culture, it speaks about upward adjustments. In basic education, over the medium term, there's an increase of 3.1%. Preschool education and training, 4.7%. Arts and culture, it's 3.5 for basic education. Post-school education, 3.1. Arts and culture, sports and recreation is 4.7. So basically there's a positive increase. And my view is that it cannot justify it being called a blackout because there is clear focus in terms of strengthening the budget allocation, even in these difficult times, towards education. Chair, on the wage bill, I think we also need to speak again on the phrases that we use to define the actions that are being taken by National Treasury. And if you look at what the expenditure priorities are outlining, the allocation of 23.6 billion is allocated to labor-intensive departments, which in our own vocabulary, we call them high-impact departments, because these are the departments that if they do not function, the impact to society, it's negative, it's dire, and it actually diminishes the quality of service delivery on the ground. But when we speak of fiscal consolidation, we then emphasize the need for discipline. And it further states that whilst we move these funds to labor-intensive departments, other departments will have to reprioritize funds to implement the agreement. And that is the wage bill agreement. Hence, I agree with Comrade Parks when he says that the wage bill has seen a reduction in nominal terms, in real terms, I mean. And Chair, this reduction and the wage bill contestation happens when the census indicates that South African population has grown to 60 million people in the country. Are we then considering the growth of the public sector in relation to that particular population growth as we engage? So it's just something that I would want to hear a comment from the presenters. Anyone can take it. To say that whilst we strengthen the work of civil servants by meeting their demands on wage and ensuring that they are motivated and are compensated in the level at which other countries like ours is compensated, is it in line with the population growth? And are we expecting that the size of the civil servant will produce the kind of service experience that we are anticipating? The other point, Chair, is on the issue of terminology again. I would prefer to use reprioritization and not cuts, particularly when we speak to the issue of school infrastructure grant, the backlog grant. And I'm saying that, Chair, Honorable Ryder is correct that there is a reduction there, but I would want to argue that based on the presentation made by the Department of Water and Sanitation, which we then had together with Basic Education, they agree that due to lack of bulk service infrastructure, there are certain areas where they are unable to implement the pit toilet eradication program. So as we then collaborate, and we requested them to collaborate to identify how both of them can work together to ensure that when a pit toilet is put there, there is proper sanitation that will be able to take away whatever that is thrown into the pit so that it's functional. Because it's pointless to have a pit latrine that a toilet that does not work. So I call it prioritization because money is being used in a vote, is being moved from a vote that is unlikely to perform and then reallocated to a vote that will assist the department to go forward. Hence, in that case, it was then moved to the main budget. Chair, the last point I'd want to rise on, and it's something that I'm asking with the presenters to consider. Again, it speaks to the terminology that we use. I touched on the issue of the wage bill, but we are then saying when you speak of a prioritization of funds, we then put in place certain mitigating factors to departments to ensure that as they do their work, they prevent leakages and wastage. That's why in one of the statements by the minister, they are saying the learning and culture, the basic education must improve their approach to allocating teachers to schools, ensure that learner and teacher support materials are used cost effectively, manage infrastructure projects more tightly, and focus on plans to catch up on lost teaching time. And this addresses Honorable Ryder's concern that he believes that some public servants are not productive. So here we are saying you need to consider the time that you spend in the workplace and ensure that it derives the value that we expect. But if you manage your projects tightly, there will not be project time overlaps and a runaway cost as related to delays in the implementation. So, Chair, with those remarks and just that one request for a comment from the presenters, I would want to appreciate your indulgence in my submission and allowing me to make inputs in this regard. Thank you very much, Co-Chairpersons.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. And we'll go to the next member, Tatu Lenzana. Can you please come in?
Greetings, Chairperson. Greetings to the presenters. And let me also welcome the presentations. Chair, my questions and or comments are somehow directed to some presentations, but I would also encourage if those other presenters would like to have a bite. Honorable Matafa has covered me on his first comment regarding the characterization of the education as the education blackout. Mine, Chairperson, was more of a question. Because look, we are not here mainly to defend. We are here to receive comments and advices from the public so that going forward we are able to learn. So if we could be told, what is the actual meaning of education blackout? What do you mean when on the other side we see growth in education? We see the performance of the education system moving upwards, the steep in the majority of provinces. When you are talking, for instance, the quality of culture of learning, culture of education and learning, the results of grade 12 and all. But now, can you still characterize that as education blackout? As I'm saying, though it goes to equal education, but others can also take the share. The same with our understanding on austerity. There was a talk of austerity, right through. How do we understand austerity from an economic point of view? When a particular country is said to have adopted an austerity budget, do we understand what that means? Do we understand the priorities that that particular government would focus on if then we are talking austerity? Or we are generic when using austerity? I'm raising this, Chairperson. Honorable Matafa has spoken about language, the cuts versus reprioritization. It links. But I want to add also another aspect here, which I feel all presenters can take a bite on. Do we ever look at the annual cash flow projection versus actual spending and are able now to say, here we are now, ending Q3, when we're looking at the cash flow projection of the year, this would have been the amount or percentage of money spent. But currently, in terms of actuals, here we are back. If you could see that we would be trailing back by 2 quarters or so in a majority of departments. And then when reprioritization is being done, you look at, for instance, what the Department of Education was justifying to us as been doing. That what they would then do, they would look into one, allowing each province from within to look into how can it juggle its funds from within the provincial department. And then thereafter, they would move on to say, within the 9 provinces, how then do they move funds around before the actual movement of funds from one particular department to the other? Hence, then, I would seek to get the understanding of colleagues as far as this is concerned. Chairperson,
No, Zola, are you wrapping up?
Was I breaking out? Where last did you hear me?
Okay.
Where last did you get me?
No, I'm asking, are you wrapping up? Are you wrapping up?
Oh yes. Let me try to wrap up. Perhaps Nokwanda, I will try to summarize. Just raising two things. Perhaps you can also cover others. What is your view on the centralization versus decentralization of procurement? This goes all to all of you. It includes also the in-year monitoring, as I have just said. Perhaps let me stop there. If there is time, I will come back, Chairperson.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Member. I would like to call Olisile, and then last will be Ocamp, Honorable Ocamp.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Chair. And let me also thank the presenters that we have invited to make inputs on these two bills. We really appreciate the ideas that have been put before this committee. And if I'm to start, Honorable Chair, I think this one cuts across to all presenters here. If you may allow me. For instance, Property Point has raised quite interesting issues here relating to small business accessibility of finance and low growth trajectory and high number of unemployment, of which I agree fully that this is a situation. Now, as I'm saying, it cuts across. I didn't hear or pick up any of the presenters alluding to the fact that there has been a rand manipulation in the country. And according to their own assessment or analysis, what that had an impact in the economy of the country. Because it's one of the very serious, violation of the economy that one can imagine, which has resulted, if not an attempt to unseat the sitting government, that such a collaboration in large scale of banking institutions to manipulate rand far back as 2007 up to date, the same repetitive offenders, you get them with a very lenient punishment. But have you, as you are making the presentation, imagine what damage, huge damage that these banks have done to the economy of the country. This is the point that I was referring to when the Property Point was raising the issues or the impact or the trajectory of economic growth it has had on small business, so and the level of high employment. Have we ever imagined what huge impact has that had on our economy and on our people? Because it sounds like it was a slow poison that has been taking place for quite a lengthy time, which then brought in some expertise to explain it so that people should understand that there's a problem in the government that if it doesn't perform this and that, and therefore it's risking the flight of investors in the country. Whereas definitely it's a known fact now that no, this is due to one of the biggest offensive against a democratic government is the rand manipulation, which has resulted then in the increase of the interest rates, whereby even small business, cannot access finance, the borrowing, it's very expensive. and a number of commodities, import goods become very expensive. So the life became very difficult. So I thought maybe also the presenters will capture this and in fact reflect that it has hugely contributed over this period under review to some of the challenges that we currently facing now, because it emerged not so long after we had high price oil, and you can imagine the debt that we're having, whose interest rates were then have to pay with high terms because of the rand manipulation. We have to submit to those high terms that the debt has to be serviced with. So I thought maybe you also raise those. So I don't know what is this consistent attack on the teachers, as workers, because in as far as one is concerned, teachers are doing a very great job. So I don't know what informed this assertion by one member here to say they are redundant, but we don't know where does that redundancy. What informs that redundancy? What research informs that redundancy? Whereas my Honorable Oscar has alluded to the fact that the census report has a different outcome in as far as the population of the country. So I don't know what studies do inform that particular assertion. So I just read it as just consistent attack to the teachers. Yes. So I agree with COSATU, the rest of the recommendations, particularly on the issue of, presidential employment program, Honorable Chair, that given the situation of high unemployment and young people in the country, this is one of the program that was really supposed to be also prioritized in as far as funding it such that it is able to absorb high number of young people in those job opportunities. And also the issue on Transnet, which if we really do not take care enough on that, it will result in a total collapse of the economy, given what Eskom is already undergoing. But the 46 billion, one believe, will also be a start to, as an injection to realize its, input to the economy to assist. Chair, let me pause at this stage. I'll come back if there's, and thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. I already said the next person is Honorable Okam.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to everybody that presented to this committee this morning. We really appreciate it, and we encourage that more people must come and present. Chairperson, a few statements, and then maybe a question or two to COSATU. Mr. Parks, you frequently refer back to the amount of the people living in South Africa in 1994 and the amount of civil servants that were there at that stage. When we are talking about a bloated wage bill, we obviously also refer primarily to the large amount of senior managers in the public sector. Now, my question is, how does the percentage of senior managers in the public sector in 1994-5 thereabout compared to the percentage of senior managers earning millions of rands are now? We have got a bloated public service because we've got a lot of senior managers that earns a lot of money that's been appointed, and that is far more in comparison percentage-wise than it were 20 years or a bit more ago. To just give you an example on this, the Chinese military has got more than 2 million soldiers, yet they've got 58 known generals. The United States Army has got almost 1.4 million soldiers, yet they've got about 200 generals. India has got 1.4 million soldiers, yet they've got roughly 2 full generals and 8 lieutenant generals. In South Africa, we've got less than 75,000 soldiers, but we've got 400 generals. So all these countries, India, China, United States combined, has got roughly 6 million soldiers with approximately 370 generals, whereas South Africa has got less than 75,000 soldiers, but we've got 400 generals. Now, you tell me that that is not bloated. The same counts for the police service. And as I said, the same counts for the public services sector where you've got the different departments. We've got a lot of directors that, according to me, have been cadre deployment appointees. That leads to poor management, as we see in our country with regards to where we sit financially. And that led to us as a country borrowing a lot of money, which led to a large debt service cost, which is now the largest item in our budget. So when we say bloated services, this is what we mean. So if you can, Mr. Parks, maybe just go and look at the comparison between what the senior management were quite a few years ago and what it is now. And then you will understand what we mean if we say that we've got this bloated public wage bill that can be lowered by having far less senior personnel that is not qualified to do their job. If you look at the country's financial situation, most certainly does not do their job properly. And we can save a huge amount of money on our wage bill, on our debt service cost, if that money is saved and better management is instituted. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ocamp. Is there any other member who wants to raise a burden of, to raise a question? Or to elaborate?
I do have some questions, if you can allow me.
Yes, I will allow you. You can continue.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. Okay, let me start by welcoming the presentations by all the presenters. We really appreciate that. So, let's say, I think equal education question. Just want to hear how do we solve this? We had a presentation coming from the Deputy Minister and the Department of Basic Education and some provinces, MECs, who highlighted the question of some schools which got very few learners by the teachers there. And so that results in some form of where even teachers who must then teach a few pupils, and we have got this infrastructure which is there, and so on and so forth. How do you know that problem, and how do you solve that problem? Because for me, perhaps this goes to all the presenters, is that when we interact here, I think it's very important that we should be solution orientated. If I were to come with a grievance list about anything, I think I'll be able to do that. But I think having said that, it's very important that we also become solution orientated. I think it was equal education again. The adjustment, one of the factors which is taken into consideration is a question of significant and unforeseeable economic and financial events. You have got a view on this one, equal education. These things are things like wars. For instance, the latest would be what is happening in Palestine and Israel. So it's one of those things which have come up and which have got huge economic and financial impact. So and based on that, then you must be agile. So how do you think we must deal with this? Because it does have impact on the economy, on the revenue, and so on. Property point, Again, I like this focus on small business, and you're welcome. I think it's the first time we interact with you. And I do share the sentiment that if you have got a thriving small business sector, a big impact goes to the economy. But from your experience, what is the red tape experienced by small businesses, especially at local government level? What do you say should be done about that? The next question going to you again, what is the involvement of small business in the dark cloud created by electricity shortage, e.g. the provision of solar panels, prepaid meters? So I'm talking here about you have got the proverbial silver lining in a dark cloud that load shedding created a lot of problems, but it also creates a possibility of new industries. But I'm particularly saying on this one, what do you think, what's happening, what's the participation of small businesses? Budget Justice Coalition. My comment is that there's no doubt that every sector can do with more resources, as we have been calling for this resource and so on. But you are aware of the fiscal challenges, for instance, the growing debt leading to higher service at debt costs, which raise the sovereignty of the country. In your opinion, where should money come from? From our side, we argue that the money should come from economic growth. Where do you see that growth coming from in our economy? Again, for your next question, you do speak highly of the public of the presidential economics employment stimulus, which is a sentiment that I share with you. But I just want to check what is the conversion rate from these temporary interventions by the president to permanent jobs, if you have that. Kosatu? You are correct. The low levels of economic growth are a problem. So the plus minus 8% economic growth is way below what the NDP proposes for us to be able to deal with the needs of our economy, which is above 5% growth rate. You know, the external shocks that we're having. I've referred to Israel, Palestine, Ukraine, Russia, and again, are still not out of COVID. But what should be done, apart from robbing Peter to pay Paul, to try and stimulate the economy? We also agree that, and I think that multi-year agreements are important because they create certainty for everybody. They even make planning much easier. So we agree that government should try to get that multi-year agreements, and we are committed to collective agreements. But here's another question, Kosatu. You say we should give more support to Eskom. Exactly what does that mean? Because as things stand now, we are at the beginning of the year or mid-year, we approved the Eskom debt relief bill of 254 billion rand. But in your input, you're saying more support. I thought you'd say something about the instability at the executive level, especially at Eskom and Transnet, because the arguments seem to be saying the problems are money, and from where I'm seated, I think money is just one element. There are more problems, but the ones I'm talking about is the instability at the executive level. What should happen about that? I would like to hear a comment. Chair, those would be my questions and comments, and thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Normally they say after Chairperson speaks, they mustn't allow anyone to speak, but It's now not a political meeting, it's a portfolio committee. So I would like to asking if there is a last member to raise he or his questions. If not, then we can go over to the comments from the representatives. Is there no one who want to comment? Honorable Lezana was saying earlier that you still have 2 points. Can you raise the 2 points, member, so that we can go to the representatives?
Yes, Chair.
1 minute or 2 minutes, not more than that.
It will be less than a minute, Chair.
Okay.
It goes to property point, but also Kusatu can cover it. What is your view on government's pace on 1, the servicing of the debt, 2, the increasing debt, and 3, the non or under expenditure? If you can, as you relate to this, also talk to your view in terms of the Stats SA census report. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, honorable member. So then I can go to the presenters who have present to us as the committee to give them 2 or 3 minutes, but not longer than that, to give them their comments on what members was raising and asking. I will start with equal education, and then property points, then budget justice and coalition, then Kusatu, and then lastly the National Treasury. You can follow suit. Equal education, start.
Okay. Thank you, honorable members, Chairperson. I don't know if I can do justice to the questions in 2 minutes, but I will try. Perhaps let me first start by addressing the much interest in the education blackout concept. So for so similar to Eskom's load shedding that creates blackouts, they are raising the issue that their future, the lights of their future are increasingly going dimmer, or there's load shedding, probably higher stages than Eskom is at the moment. And so for us, the blackout is not about one singular event or moment. It's a series of things that culminate to create a really dire situation, or potentially threatens our likelihood of even meeting Sustainable Development Goal 4 in 7 short years. And so when we look at our written submission, we've taken careful time to unpack or to really address what we mean by the education blackout. And money is only one aspect of it. It is not the beginning and end. And so with respect to the honorable member who raised the issue of, but there's an increase or upward adjustment, which does not suggest this picture we are painting of a blackout. We respectfully disagree in that, you know, with even that upward adjustment is only increase in nominal terms. If we consider inflation, we consider learner enrollment or population growth in the learner sector, we are seeing that this money is not actually doing anything. There's no growth in a sense or in a nutshell. So that for us is what we are trying to highlight, that the intensity with which we are running or coming together to intervene and rescue Eskom is the same intensity, if not more, that we need to really apply to the schooling sector. And I take the other point and question about terminologies and nomenclature. And, you know, ideally, yes, it's terminologies matter. But for our members, it doesn't matter if it is a cut or reprioritization. The the underlying effects are the same. And in that, the issues that really, the social impact of that reprioritization of the infrastructure grant into the main budget to address compensation essentially is depriving them of a very safe, dignified learning environment, which then does not create the right conducive environment for quality teaching and learning. And we want to highlight this matter, and we even challenge the department to come back and really and contradict us in this matter, that even though there progress in the sector, we have a serious learning deficit. The quality is not on par with the investment that we are making in the sector. And so we can come back and do metric results and blow the trumpet and do all that we want. We are saying that there's an inherent quality deficit, and it is really jeopardizing the future of our learners, our children, and it has impact on other sectors, the labor market indefinitely, and then we'll be back here rescuing Eskom again because we don't have qualified technicians to address the energy crisis in the future. And so let me quickly go to the second or the third point, which is about non-viable schools or small schools who have the infrastructure and their teachers there, but the learners are not enough to warrant the kind of investment or the whole scenario. How do we resolve that problem? And this challenge or contradiction really happens. You see it play out predominantly in your rural provinces, and even in your urban provinces, it's skewed towards marginalized areas like your township schools. So because of the quality deficit, no matter how great the infrastructure is or how many teachers are in that school, if learners and parents and school communities feel like they are not getting the services that they need, the quality is not good enough, they are going to shift to somewhere where they're going to get that quality service delivery. And eventually we have white elephants where we spend so much money investing in infrastructure somewhere closer to them, but they're not getting what they need from it. So they're moving or they're taking their business elsewhere. This is a concern that we have raised for departments and provincial departments to consider how they spread the the teaching posts, and making sure that we've got quality teachers in every school, not in some schools, such that we have got a skew and a preferential, in favor of so-called performing schools or great schools or nice schools in terms of academic performance. And so these are some of the conundrums or the intricacies or the complexities in the issues or the challenges that the sector is facing. It is not something we're going to resolve overnight. It's not something that can easily be resolved by clicking one button. We realize the challenges and the complexities, but education departments, who are the custodians of providing education, are supposed to interrogate these conditions and come up with workable solutions in connection with school communities or communities where these schools are embedded in. So it does not make sense to rationalize schools simply because it is non-viable. We need to have alternative in place to make sure that indeed the learners that are going to be affected are getting the services and the education that they deserve. And on a matter of unforeseeable circumstances, and this also comes back to terminology or nomenclature. So for us, we question what are these unforeseeable circumstances. And when we pose the question during the question and answer on the day of the MTBPS, essentially the response we got from Treasury was, the sector will not be able to spend the money, right? And so it needed to be cut or reprioritized. Let me just use the right terminology for you there. So what this means is that they already foreseen that this one is not going to happen. We knew that it was ideally not going to happen 100%, but this is one of the consistent issues we've been raising at this committee level in different conversations with other members and other departments and oversight bodies when it comes to education funding and investment. We are not asking to just throw money at the problem. We are asking for better and judicious spending and financial management. So Treasury cannot simply justify taking money or reprioritizing money because it will not be spent. At the end of the day, there will be no service delivery, and this service delivery is at a very critical and sensitive area, which is infrastructure. And we see over and over again, if you Google infrastructure conditions in schools, you will find 1,000,001 articles. And so we don't need to even make the point or belabor the issue here, that there's a real need for financial investment in that area. Taking away money because it will not be spent seems reasonable and obviously, probably a wise move on the part of Treasury. However, we are punishing learners for the non-performance and also like a non-commitment or not coming to the table by the department. So we cannot use, learners are caught in the crossfire when it comes to these decisions, right? We cannot give money because they are not spending. However, we need the money for them for learners to get the issues. And so we are punishing education departments, but actually what we are doing is we are punishing vulnerable learners who depend on these resources for quality service delivery. And on the issue of teachers' remuneration and obviously increases in the salary and something not to be excited about. And I'm sure Honorable a member who raised this question, there was very little to celebrate from this whole saga of the adjustment, the 2023-24 adjusted appropriation. But we also recognize that this was made, this move or decision was made in good faith to try and address another challenge that is in the sector. Whether or not that translates into actually paying the teachers who deserve it or give it going to the right kind of human resources is left to be seen, and probably not an area of our expertise to comment on. And except to say that we hope that this really address the remuneration challenge that the sector has been complaining about for some time now. And about the issue of the RAN manipulation, I don't think we are in any position to comment on this. I've been educated about this scenario, what is happening. We don't have enough information to make an educated contribution on this issue in any form or shape, except to say it is well noted, and we hope to do further reading and investigation to see what that really means. I'm not sure if I've missed any critical questions that were directed specifically to equal education. If I have, Honorable Chair will probably help me to remember, and maybe I'll respond to it later on. And I do hope that I have really done justice.
Thank you,
you completed?
Yeah, she has. I think let's go to the next one.
Okay, Chairperson. The next one is the property point. Property point. Nkwanda.
Yes, pardon. I was just trying to unmute myself. So on the question that I received from an honorable member, just with regards to what do we prefer between centralization and decentralization, I wouldn't like to come across as though we are straddling the fence, but unfortunately it does depend on various factors. With centralization, you do have streamlined processes, which I guess provides greater control over procurement activities and just ensures consistency and compliance with policies, right? But then with decentralization, you get the small businesses having autonomy over their own processes and their own decisions. So perhaps maybe a hybrid approach, maybe combining both elements of centralization and decentralization, to kind of strike a balance between efficiency and flexibility for small businesses as well, right? And then now to move on to the question that we received from a red tape experiences point of view of small businesses at local government. I think from the small businesses that we support through our programs, what we see, or the complaints that we note, is late payments from the public sector, which essentially affects small business cash flows, and this then just leads to them shutting down their businesses because they are demotivated. This also leads to quite angry small businesses, leading to strikes, and then also just late completion of projects. And so we hope that with the tabling of the National Small Enterprise Amendment Bill, which aims to address such issues of late payments by creating an ombud services for small businesses, that these concerns rather will be addressed. Again, we also see small businesses encountering, corruption risks when dealing with local government officials, leading just to additional challenges and costs. And then swiftly moving along to the question that was posed with regards to what is the participation of small businesses within the renewable energy sector. Yes, we do have our Eskom crisis, but as also was mentioned that, there is a light at the end of the tunnel with renewable energy opportunities. And so we actually just wrapped up a study where we will be informing our strategy on a new energy efficiency and sustainability program, where we aim to support small businesses within this renewable energy sector, specifically on solar, photovoltaic systems, inverters, etc. And we also noted through the study that small businesses are already involved in renewable energy sources, right? Either through wind energy, where some are involved in maintaining and repairing wind turbines, bioenergy, hydropower, etc. But I think the issue is that they usually enter towards the end of the value chain. So they'll enter as suppliers or distributors or maintenance service providers. But as Property Point, I think we would like to see them towards the beginning of the value chain, where they enter as manufacturers or system developers, but specifically tailored for South Africa. And then just lastly, our view on the government pace of servicing debt. I think we did mention in our presentation that South Africa's decision, I think, to increase their borrowing, even though they're not in a good credit stance with rating agencies, is really not an attractive option. And I think it will have significantly negative implications for small businesses, So should South Africa be unable to service its debt, it can really lead to a worsened credit rating. This then also would lead to higher interest rates, increased of lack of investor confidence, and really an impossible environment for small businesses to thrive. And so this, we then say that increasing government borrowing, you increase interest rates, and therefore makes it more difficult for small business to access additional funding and business development support services. Yes, I think my 3 minutes might be over. I hope I covered all the questions that were directed to us. Thank you.
No, Kwame, is there still honorable members that you must questions that you must respond to?
I think those were the ones that were directed to me, if
yes, Chair.
I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yes, Stephenson.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Pardon,
I can't hear you.
My network is quite poor. So, okay, it's on.
Mine as well. I didn't hear the honorable member was say something, honorable chairperson.
No, Chair, I was saying to all the questions that honorable members raised. Thank you.
Okay.
Continue.
The next honorable, the next representative is Budget, Justice and Coalition.
Thank you, honorable members and everyone within the hearing. So we'll just respond and please notify us if there's any responses that we've missed. So firstly, I think especially for this hearing, we have to clarify what we mean as the BJC by austerity. And we think that simply defined, austerity is a set of economic practices which aim to reduce government deficits and stimulate economic growth. But conventionally and historically, how we see this unfolding is through cuts to government expenditure, regressive tax hikes, and increases on interest rates, or a combination of all these strategies. But specifically historically, where you see austerity being implemented, whether it was in Greece following the financial crisis, whether it was in the United States, whether it was in the UK in the 1980s and since, most of the expenditures go towards public services, public goods, and social welfare. And we think in South Africa, where you have millions of people who are poor, where you have violence and pervasive crime, where you have mass joblessness, where you have high levels of drug abuse and malnutrition, decreasing expenditure towards public goods and public service is not only a huge risk towards the economy, because remember, people can't participate in the economy if they don't have the resources and the economic agency to do so, but moreover, you risk a political and social crisis. In our perspective, if you do not budget towards socioeconomic rights and towards socioeconomic development, you risk the repetition of the kind of crisis that we saw, for example, in Durban of 2021, due to mass hunger and due to mass unemployment. So we don't think this is reprioritization of the budgets. We think by any definition within economics that it is austerity. And there may be a disagreement about that, but from our perspective, what Treasury has been pursuing for the past several years are austerity measures. And we think they're quite counterintuitive for a country that is so poor, whose people are so poor, and most of whom are unemployed. Moreover, it also and this leads us on to the point about the public sector and the bloating of the public sector. So we agree with the honorable members in terms of how you have managers from the public sector who are overpaid. But the reality is, from our perspective, that you have more South Africans who need healthcare, who need education, who need the sustainable and subsidized or even free supply of basic services. And so we think it's not an issue of the public sector being necessarily bloated. It's the public sector not being properly managed to be able to suit the needs of most South Africans. And in fact, we see that the police, as a result of budget cuts, have lost 20,000. We've lost 20,000 policemen in the past 2 years. There are massive vacancies of nurses across the country in the thousands. There are massive vacancies also within education. Considering the number of South Africans who are in poverty, who are unemployed, not only do we think that you have to increase the capacity of the state in terms of the number of people, but you also have to ensure that those people are properly skilled, that there are the right incentives for them to do their jobs, and that they're adequately supported as well. So we think that every country that has pursued a developmental agenda to get people out of poverty and out of unemployment has boosted the capacity of the state. And of course, the state must also be democratic. It must be truly accountable and transparent to people as well. But that's a political problem that we're not really here to deal with. And then finally, on this question of currency manipulation and its contribution to our general economic situation, I mean, look, there needs to be discussions, of course, about how do we properly regulate the private sector? How do we have good oversight? How do we discipline bad actors in the private sector? But for us as the BJC, we think the more systemic problem is the policy reorientation that Treasury has adopted in the past several years. And we think that, of course, what the banks are accused of doing and what some have admitted to do is an issue that must be dealt with. But we think that if you pursue high interest rates, if you pursue regressive tax policies, and if you pursue cuts to public expenditure in a country that has so many people who live in destitution, that is more likely to cause you an issue overall in the long term from our perspective. I'll end my part from there. I think if my colleague wants to contribute, yes.
Sure, thanks. I just want to jump here and address the other two questions, the one about economic growth and the second one about the conversion rate for the presidential employment stimulus. So with regards to economic growth, again, this is not a silver bullet. Our views is that there should be a three-pronged approach. The one is having a vision for the economy that's energizing, that focuses on GDP growth with a GDP growth that is binding on national treasury. Because at the moment we are sacrificing growth over fiscal consolidation. And it's just important to note that GDP growth alone, so we know that there is a positive relationship between GDP growth and employment, but GDP growth alone won't lead to the quality of growth. So the second leg, it's actually the capacity of the state to drive economic growth and creating jobs. And we know that when the government invests in its people and infrastructure, more jobs are created. And we've heard from the other speakers, there's definitely a need for investment in infrastructure, but also looking at the creation of common good. And the third leg is actually these public employment programs, and in the specific, the presidential employment stimulus with the social employment fund has really shown, and the basic education employment initiative has really shown the impact of focusing on areas that require attention in communities. The Basic Education Employment Initiative employed over 800,000 teacher assistants that helped teachers in class, and some of young people were employed as reading champions. And we've seen from polls that there's definitely dire needs to support young people to acquire competencies in reading and writing. And so that is the one question. The second point is the conversion rate to temporary jobs. So one of the reasons for the ask of long-term funding for PES is to make sure that funds can be allocated to monitoring and evaluation, because the dashboard that currently exists, we think it's a great step forward to promoting accountability and transparency. We know exactly how many opportunities are created, and we also know the demographic split of the beneficiaries, but we really need to invest in understanding what happens when these opportunities end, so that we create the right environment for these programs to actually flourish. So there's definitely need to understand what happens after these programs, but at the same time, we feel that there needs to be a reset in the public employment space, where we really need to understand what is the framework for these programs to create quality first work experiences. What are our goals? Because I think there's also different goals. The one is for young people to pursue further education and training. The other one is to promote self-employment or find temporary job, full-time jobs. And but we know, sorry, the last point got sidetracked. The last point is that we know from current evidence that the stipends that young people receive from being part of these short-term employment opportunities really help them in different ways, by, for example, saving to start or to promote their side hustles, but also to keep them active in the labor market. Looking for work is an extremely expensive activity. And we know from research that a high number of young people have to choose between buying groceries or looking for work. Research by UJ in 2019 quantified those activities as costing nearly 1,000 rand a month. So we know that there is financial impact in trickling and for example, also supporting local vendors and local economy. So there's definitely different layers of impact that public employment programs promote. So we really need to stop producing indicators that reflect this level of development that they support. Yeah, that's all from me.
Thank you very much, presenter from the Justice and Coalition. Can we get in Kusato?
Yeah, no, thanks, Chair. I think thanks to members for the questions. Look, I think it's positive, Chair, that we largely, irrespective of political views, we're largely raising the same issues. I think on the point which is raised by quite a few members, Honorable Ryder, Honorable Matafa, Shenge, the Chair, and many other members, on the wage bill. Well, look, we raised the issue that the public service wage is not bloated, because that's been a mantra said many, many times by Treasury and also by some of the political parties in Parliament. I think hence you made the point that let's look at facts, let's not look at slogans. Population has doubled since 1994. Public service has not doubled. It's increased by about 20%. In fact, even less if you take into account, normally we have about 70,000 unfilled vacancies. And that has an impact upon the ability of public service to deliver quality public services. So you have longer queues at Home Affairs, which disrupts businesses. It means workers spend days in the queues. You have workers spending long hours queuing at hospitals. You have police struggling to deal with the rising crime rates. You have an increasing teacher-learner ratio, and all that has an impact. Chair, we often like to say public servants and to demonize them, and political parties in Parliament love to do that. It may make sense for the electoral basis, but public servants are not some abstract theory. It's about 350,000 teachers. It's about 172,000 police officers, about 70,000 or 60,000 correctional service members, the 70,000 Defence Force personnel, the 10,000 SARS employees. It's the 100,000 nurses, about 10,000 doctors, etc. All of these combined are more than 90% of public service. So when we go around and kicking public servants and say they don't deserve to have their salaries protected from inflation, they don't deserve to be able to provide food for their families or to invest in their children's education, this is who we are kicking. We would agree with Honourable Okam 100% that we need to shift resources from the top, from management, which is about 20,000 personnel, to frontline services, to nurses, to doctors, to police officers, to teachers. That we would agree. That's something we've been raising as COSATU for a long, long time. We would also actually agree, Chair, that we need to reduce what we spend on politicians, be it the size of cabinet, the size of provincial executive councils, and even the 10,000 plus councils we constantly seek to grow every election cycle. We have made proposals because we don't want to see the state collapse. We have made proposals to government about let's have a single wage regime for the entire public services sector, because right now public service is about 800,000 employees. If you take the public sector into account, it grows to about 1.2, 1.1 million. We think that can help to save space. We've long been raising the issue of needing to stopping the proliferation of creating entities and agencies where officials in the senior management level create agencies left, right, and center as a way of circumventing the public service wage regime so they can pay themselves more than what they're entitled to under the public service wage regime. So, for example, Chair, you have the Road Traffic Management Corporation, who has the very important task of issuing traffic tickets. The management gets paid more than the President of the Republic, so that can't be right. Chair, we do appreciate the Minister of Finance, Madiba, has made efforts to rebuild collective bargaining trust, to rebuild the damage done by his predecessor, and we will support multi-year agreements because it benefits everybody, the state, workers, etc. I think, Chair, that we must also be a little bit fair to public servants. Most of them don't get paid well. Police officers, teachers, as Honourable Ryder said, most have not received inflationary increases for some time, including in 2020 where there's no increase. And we can really see, Chair, a significant increase in the brain drain of skilled public servants in the private sector to overseas. So I think the issue of cost of living, we think that the space, we need to provide some space to reduce the fuel price taxes, which 2 ministers of energy have spoken about in the last 4 years and haven't actioned. Honourable Shenge and Honourable Ryder say what needs to be done. We think, well, number one is to give support to Eskom, give support to Transit and PRASA, invest in the infrastructure programs to help stimulate the economy. Let's see what kind of additional support can we give to SMEs, some sort of better enhanced loan guarantee scheme, for lack of a better adjective, but also to give support to the poor through the SOD grant, the presidential employment program, looking at the taxes we provide on food, key food items, and also the two-part pension relief, because that can help rebuild the states, grow the economy, and give relief to the poor. Chair, I think on Eskom, look, I mean, we do appreciate the Honourable Ryder's sentiments, but we think, look, we know we're going to have these bumps in the road on Eskom. It's inevitable. The generation fleet is so old. But hence we say we need to give more support to Eskom, not only to invest in maintenance, which gives immediate relief, but also to the longer term sustainability. And the final solution to load shedding is to bring on board new generation capacity. So yes, we've seen progress since January when things are really dire, but we don't think we're out of the woods yet, and hence there's a need for more support to be given to Eskom. I think Chair, also to the Honorable Shenge, equally need to give prioritized Transnet. So what needs to be given? No, we would agree. It's not just a question of debt relief, which is important, or recapitalization. It's about putting in place skilled permanent management at Eskom, at Transnet, at PRASA, etc. It's about giving support from Treasury to reduce wasteful expenditure, the law enforcement agency to come on board around tackling corruption, vandalism, cable theft, criminality, about giving support to invest in infrastructure and equipment and skills, strategic partnerships and localization. Those are the kind of the comprehensive package you need to put in place. To Honorable Mlazana around public procurement. So, Chair, there is a very good public procurement bill in the Finance Committee, Scott. It's going to be adopted by next week by the National Assembly. And that speaks to overhauling public procurement, a single procurement regime for the entire state, underpinned by transparency, managing politically exposed persons, debarment of people who defraud the state, and balancing centralization of certain strategic items versus decentralization, and also enhancing localization and preferential procurement. We hope that will help. Chair, the issue of rand manipulation by Honorable Kaiso. No, look, Chair, we were quite shocked, I think, by the rest of the country about the extent and the damage of probably about R1 billion the Competition Commission has highlighted. We encourage the Competition Commission to hold the remaining, I think it's 25 banks who have yet to be dealt with, but it can't simply be a slap on the wrist because they have pickpocketed those lenders, those bank customers. They've also damaged the entire country where we borrow, whether it's companies or the state who borrow in foreign currencies. And there needs to be a frank conversation, including with the Reserve Bank and Treasury and the Financial Sector Conduct Authority. What exactly have they done to deal with these issues? And what are they going to do to prevent a recurrence? Because this is not the first time we've seen banks misbehave, not only in South Africa, but I think also, as former President Mbeki mentioned, even in Europe, etc. I think, Chair, just galloping, I know you said there's time pressures. I think the last issue that Honorable Mlemzana had raised, I think where we disagree with Treasury is that we recognize the need to manage our debt trajectory. It's quite scary how we've grown from about 23% debt to GDP a decade ago to 70-80% today. But the way to resolve that is not to go and pickpocket nurses and teachers who have very little to pickpocket, is to grow the economy. You grow the economy by fixing Transnet, Eskom, municipalities, SOEs, by stimulating the economy, by rebuilding the state, by giving relief to the poor and unemployed. That's how you do it in a smart, sustainable manner. But to think this is an accounting exercise, we think Treasury approaches it like, well, they've done it in 2020, and we're still in the same crisis today, 4 years down the road. And it'll be in the same crisis, in fact, it'll be in a worse crisis in February if we don't fix Transnet quickly. That's for us, it's about growing the economy, not simply trying to make a budget statement look pretty. I think, Chair, just lastly on the Status A, we've had good engagement with Status A. I think they do a fantastic job. They're always an example of why it's critical to invest in quality public services. We hope that government departments take into account the reports that Status A gives when they do the investments or the budget allocations. But it does raise quite significant red lines around the shift from rural areas to urban centers, the impact we're not having around investment in rural areas, the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal and Limpopo, etc. Because you can see in Gauteng and Cape Town and Durban, we're overburdening the urban centers. I think it also raises some alarm bells about migration, not only within South Africa, but also of middle-class skilled South Africans leave increasingly overseas. So, for example, you invest heavily as a state in medical students. But the day a medical student finishes a community service, they're on a flight to London. So that's something we need to be addressing. And I think one of the solutions there is that instead of us thinking how little can we pay public servants, perhaps we should be saying how can we retain these skills? Because by trying to squeeze a few cents out of them, we're actually creating a further crisis where we lose these skilled public services and servants to well-developed countries. So I think let me stop there, Chair. There are no members on the probe is tight, and thanks to members for giving us space. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matthews. we come to the end of the deliberation and also the comments and the respondings. So I would like to convey our appreciation as the committee or joint committee to all the presentatives from their presentations and their inputs, well appreciated to us as the committee, and also the presentation will assist us to taking South Africa forward. Some of them are negative, some of them are positive, and it's good to criticize, but also to grow the economy, to address social and inequality of South Africa, to moving South Africa forward. Thank you very much, all the organizations who present today. We really appreciate it. So I don't want to prolong the meeting long. So I want also to ask National Treasury to give their comments. National Treasury.
Good afternoon, Chair. Julie de Bruin here. The only members of the Treasury in the meeting are, I think, representatives from Public Finance, but there's nobody here from ILM, so there's no Ravesh, and there's nobody here from Fiscal Policy. I do see somebody from Public Service Remuneration, so maybe Marumo, you want to make some comments, given that the large part of the discussion was on that, and then I'll come at the end. Thanks. I'm not the leader, Chair.
Yeah. Can you come in?
Thank you, Julia, and good afternoon to the honorable chairpersons and honorable members. My name is Marumo Mage. I'm from the Budget Office Remunerations. I think there were just some couple of comments around the wage issues, and I think the one was from honorable member about the issue of whether when we talk of bloating, I mean whether the headcounts have kept pace with population growth over the years. And if, I mean, indeed, I mean, we, given the fact that, I mean, the service demand has been increasing. So I think if, I mean, just to answer on that one, Honorable Chair, I mean, if you look at the headcount growth since 2010 and 11, I mean, we had about 1,280,000 employees, just around that number, 1.280 million in terms of the headcount or of the full-time equivalents. And you look at the numbers now, I mean, we just slightly above 1.3 million. So based on those numbers, I mean, one can indeed conclude that, I mean, the headcount numbers has not really kept pace with population growth. So we've not really been increasing the public service as much as I think it should. But I mean, over the past 2 MTF, I mean, in the 2022 MTF and also in the current MTF, I mean, we've been making some funding available, I mean, to sectors such as education, health, police, I mean, just to try and make sure that, I mean, they keep pace with this service delivery demand. But however, I must indicate that there is always a huge trade-off between headcount increases as well as the unit cost increases. So when the other one increases at a higher pace, the other one does suffer a little bit. And we did put a graph, I think, in the 2022 MTBPS, where we've shown the the growth in these headcounts as well, vis-a-vis on the other side, the growth in unit cost, which is mostly driven by the wage increases. So I mean, it becomes important that as and when we do our budgeting, I mean, that we balance between the two. And I was also
Mr. Marumo, it has taken you 5 minutes to deal with that question. You don't have a lot of time, please.
Yeah, just the last one, Chair. Also on the bloating, I think I also wanted to just refer to the honourable members and the colleagues that made submission. I mean, we also put the numbers in the last year's MTBPS, where we've broken down the number of SMS that we have in the public service vis-a-vis the total number of headcounts that we have. I mean, the SMS numbers makes about 1.8% of the total public service. But as to whether that represents bloating or not, Honourable Chair, I guess, I mean, it's open to interpretation by different stakeholders. So I think those were the two comments or the two matters that I could pick up from the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Treasury, Mr. Marumo. The lady who said she going to respond lastly after Mr. Marumo. Can you conclude?
Thank you, Chair. I've just put a message in the chat. If there are any Treasury ILM colleagues in the meeting, please raise your hand and respond to the question on Eskom. Otherwise, we'll have to come back to the committee with that response.
Please don't let my meeting be upside down. You said when Mr. Marumo was responding, then you will come to conclude. So if that person of Eskom is in the meeting, let him respond and then you conclude, please.
Apologies, Chair. Then it appears that there are no ILM colleagues in the meeting, and I'm sorry for that. Now, just to say thank you to the presenters for the presentations. You raise issues that are quite sector specific, and so we will deal with those in the way that we normally do, which is look at them and see what of the recommendations we can take into the February discussions and debates around the budget. And then just to finally say that from the National Treasury side, public finance, these were difficult proposals that had to be made. The revenue was down and expenditure had to be reduced because we couldn't borrow any more than we had already borrowed. And so the decision to reduce budgets was not taken lightly. And there was a lot of debate about where best to take the reductions from. And so everybody had to look across the whole of government, all 40 votes. And that is what is presented in the adjusted appropriation bill, all the reductions to all the votes. So thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, but just want to add on the issue of Eskom. We want that response, and you must send it to the portfolio committees because we have two secretaries here, to the both of them, so that we can be familiarize us with the content of that response. Because Eskom is critical, so therefore we will not leave any response out, because we must know what's going on in Eskom, where we're sitting. As we speak now, I have load shedding here. And we don't take it lightly. So the Honourable Chairperson,
Sorry,
Chairperson. Yes, who's speaking?
Co-chairperson, this is Darren. Yes, this is Darren. There's a hand up, Tabang. I don't know if Tabang is from National Treasury, and earlier Lebohang's hand was also up, Chairperson. Thank you.
Why are they coming now out of the of the gate. Where they come from now? When we are already hand over to the National Treasury to conclude, from which department are they?
Chairperson, I think let's continue and close the meeting since Julia has concluded. So please continue and close the meeting.
Yeah, we conclude the meeting, Chairperson. Must I allow those two persons to put up their hands?
No, Chair. We were concluding the meeting. Please conclude it. I think Julia has already summarized the meeting.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Chairperson, for your advice. So therefore, we're gonna conclude this meeting as already. Thanks all the representatives who have doing their presentations, included with the last presentation of the last comment from National Treasury, and therefore we conclude that agenda point. So, Chairperson, we must come now to the point of the announcement. If there is that announcements was coming from both the secretaries, if you can just giving us the announcements, secretaries.
Just a reminder from Standing Committee on Appropriations. We are adopting 3 reports on Tuesday. The reports on the 2023 MTBPS Adjustments Appropriation Bill, as well as the Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill. Thank you.
Chairperson, from the Select Committee on Appropriations side, our next meeting is on Thursday. We'll be considering 3 reports as well, Chairperson. And maybe on behalf of Nkulego, I would like to remind members that there is a meeting that is scheduled to start at 1 o'clock this afternoon. Thank you. For the Select Committee on Finance. Thank you.
It seems you're not even give us a break to have lunch. But anyhow, the work must continue. I would like to ask my chairperson if we have some comments or announcements to make after the secretaries, so that we can close the meeting. Honorable Buthelezi. Honorable Buthelezi. Chairperson. Are you here, Chairperson? What's going on now with this?
Can we leave the meeting?
No, I want to ask.
Co-chairperson, sorry, I've just spoken to the chairperson. He's reconnected. He is reconnected.
Okay, honorable members, let's close the meeting. I thank you.
Madam co-chairperson, sorry, I was still busy speaking.
Oh, this network is very bad.
Madam Chair, the chairperson asked the members of the Standing Committee on Appropriations to please remain on the platform.
To do what?
To please remain on the platform. Mr. Memezi is saying something but cannot hear anything.
I cannot hear anything as well. We want to conclude the meeting.
Sorry, co-chairperson.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, Chairperson Buthelezi has requested the members of the Standing Committee to remain on the platform, please. He reconnected. Okay. He is rejoining the meeting now. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, members, you hear most. You must just stay on the platform.
No, we got it. We got it, Chair.
Got it, Chair.
Yes, Chair, we are remaining.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, all members. I got cut, but I'm back. Thank you.
You're welcome, Chairperson.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, I was asking that maybe you want to conclude on to maybe making a few remarks.
No,
and then
members
we
have
close
already left. Members have already left. It's fine. The meeting is closed. It's okay, Chair. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you, Chairperson. Long live the Chair. Long live.
Thank you, Chair.
Long live, chairs, co-chairpersons.
Thank you. All members score. We're all in now. Am I right? Thank you.
Yes, Chair.
Can you hear me? I don't know what's happening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Sheng.
Yes, we can hear you, Chair.
Okay. No. I just wanted us to dispose of the minutes because on Tuesday we're having about three. We're having three.
Yes, Chair.
The chairperson is experiencing some serious network challenges. He basically wanted us to adopt the minutes of the 24th of November.
Yes. No, maybe if I can just come in about the rescue of them.
Please come in, honorable member.
Yes, Chair. I just wanted to make a small proposal here, Chair. I know we are dealing with the minutes, but I wanted to bring issue around the issue of Eskom discussion next week in the NA. So if maybe the Chair could, yeah.
No. Okay, thanks, Honorable So let's put that as an agenda item. Let's make it agenda item number 2. Thank you. I don't know what's happening with my network today. Can you still hear me?
Yes, Chair, we can hear you.
Okay. No, I was saying let's make that agenda item number 2. So we've got 2 agenda items. The one is the minutes which were sent to us and the second of no. Can you hear?
Not clearly, Chairperson, not clearly.
Darren, do you have the date of the minutes so that we can continue so long?
It's the minutes of the 24th of November, as indicated earlier.
Okay. No, I think we can proceed with the minutes of the 24th of November, since that they have been circulated to all members of the committee. Can I get the mover and the seconder of those minutes, honorable members?
Mlenzana moves.
I'm from Mehmet.
Can I get this? Okay. So the minutes of the 24th of November 2023 have been moved by Honorable Mlenzana and seconded by Honorable Humphrey Memes. Can we get the second set of the minutes? Darren, what is it?
It's only that set, Mr. Kaiso. It's only the 24th.
Okay. Is the chairperson not still around, ne?
I'm in, Chair.
Okay, we can proceed.
Yeah. So the minutes actually adopted. I think let's allow Honorable Kaiso to come in on his agenda item. Honorable Kaiso, please come in.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I would just want to seek the indulgence of the committee that's in that next week. Next week we'll be discussing or debating the two, the two bills, the adjustment and the Eskom debt relief amendment bill. But look, what one was observing was that we have on Eskom debt relief amendment bill, we have some few sentences there that has led to that will lead to a debate. But in my opinion and proposal, I would suggest something very different approach on that particular bill, given that it's just a few sentences there that we can simply deal with in a form of declaration, and we know the bigger weight is then thrown behind the adjustment appropriation bill being the main debate. So, and even it will help us for a day of a program for us, and that's what I want to throw in and propose, make a proposal.
Thank you, Honorable Raiso. Any takers on Lenzana? I see you.
Yes, thanks, Chairperson. Thanks, Chairperson. Look, I can see that fortunately Honorable Murray is still on the platform. I'm not sure if other parties are in. However, listening to what Honorable Kaiso is raising, I had my own view, Chairperson, but of course we will see. My view would be, would it be too much if the bill is tabled for noting, Chairperson, taking into consideration that in essence, we had exhausted ourselves as the committee. One, discussing from within the committee the bill, and two, we went to plenary for debate and we debated the bill. So now it's this minor correction. But then if the feeling is that let's go for declaration, it is still fine for me, but even noting for me would be, the best. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you. Any other view? Okay.
Memezi. Chairperson, thank you very much. I am of the view that indeed this issue we have convincingly in Parliament. So I second Honorable the view that deal with it only for noting. That's my secondment to his proposal, Chair.
Thank you, honorable members. Can you hear me?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, Chair, we can hear you.
Okay. There are two proposals, the one of noting and declarations. Can I try to persuade those who are for noting that let's please mute, honorable members. Please mute. Honorable Memezi, mute. Honorable Memezi, mute. Yeah, good. I hope you can hear me, honorable members. I'm saying, can I persuade those who are talking about noting? Let's have declarations. Let's propose declarations. I hope there won't be violent opposition from the members who wanted noting from that honorable Lenzana and honorable Memezi. So I want to propose that we agree on approaching parliamentarian, right to Parliament, and just say that we as committee would like to make declarations on that one, not necessarily debates that we're going to have. Agreed?
Yes, Chairperson, let me formally agree and withdraw the approach of noting.
Yeah, thank you. So
agreed.
Yeah, thank you, honorable members. So Darren, please then communicate with the powers that be. I don't know who you communicate with, about this decision of the committee, right, on that matter. In any case, okay.
Agree, Chairperson. Agree, Chairperson.
Okay, thank you so much, honorable members. I don't know what was happening with my connectivity today. Usually I don't have this problem. My sincere apologies. So have a good afternoon, have a good weekend. Let's meet on Tuesday to consider the reports. All members, please also make your inputs when those reports come to you, so that we can continue what we're doing to have very short meetings when we in a formal meeting on Tuesday. Thank you very much. Thank you to the support staff and everybody. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chairperson.
Enkos. We're in December. It's December, all members.
Recording stopped.